Noel sat on his knees, head beneath the crumbling building that the man had described. Noel wondered if he would follow the same path as the man, always fighting against death while someone struggled to live. Tears welled up in Noel's eyes, and he cried, unable to answer everything that started that day. Noel decided to become a seeker. Startled, Noel turned around when he heard someone calling his name. The man said that he shouldn't allow anyone to underestimate him because a true man couldn't let himself become like that. Noel looked at the man who patted his head and smiled. Noel thought this was his grandfather's motto, a former seeker. He remembered that seekers were those who searched for something within themselves, and their purpose could be finding treasure in ruins or even destroying themselves. They could also face danger from criminals or monsters, not to mention the successful seekers who were idolized by unimaginable people. He remembered that his grandfather, who had this nickname, was the most famous seeker in the capital of the empire. He recalled how people used to see a large number of monsters and wonder if they were in hell, and one of them noted as if a demon was doing it from the depths of hell. Suddenly, someone said that there was someone immortal there. One person asked who that immortal was at that time, and it was his young grandfather. When they walked up to them and apologized, explaining that there were many valuable monsters around, he got a little carried away. He suggested handling it carefully, and the man who had previously asked who was immortal got closer to Grandpa and said that he wasn't as strong as he thought was. He said he realized all that Grandpa could do was collect bodies. Noel asked again, not happy, and he asked if he was really offended. He yelled at the famous seeker to try to silence him forcefully. He started attacking, but he blocked his punches and he fell to the ground. He noticed it. He was almost dead because of his pride, and he added that he shouldn't look down on him. He looked at him in horror. After hearing this story from his grandfather, Neol shouted that he was cool. Grandpa admitted that he had seen many troublemakers and always put them in their place, but didn't kill them. Neol said that he also wanted to be a seeker, and his grandfather looked at him in surprise. Neol exclaimed that he wanted to be a strong seeker like his grandfather, and asked if it could be done. Grandpa laughed, put his hand on Noel's back, and pulled him towards him, telling him to become a seeker because if it was Noel, he could become the strongest seeker of all time because he was his grandson. Noel thanked his grandfather and moved away from him, saying that he smelled like beer. Grandpa said if that was the case, there was no need to choose a class and asked again, pointing to the book. Neil held it in his hand and explained that the class held hidden potential that began to manifest after reaching the age of 10. He promised that when the time came, he would show it to Noel. Neil was very excited to read about the classes in the book and admired how great they were. He wondered who he would become and also wanted to know quickly when that would happen. When it was time to determine Noel's class, he was told that his class was a female broadcaster responsible for distribution. They said that there could be no mistake, and explained that it was because of their weak personal combat performance. The broadcaster's response was that they could only strengthen their combat power as a group with their words, but because they were practically alone, they couldn't do anything that people called the weakest class. Neil felt terrified by these words, and the woman said that this was exactly what the broadcaster represented. Sometime later, Neil cried because of his class. But his grandfather patted his head and asked him not to cry, because even though it was tough, he would make sure that Noel became the best seeker in the world. He objected to this because it couldn't be done with the weakest class. And his grandfather said that now Noel looked like his late mother, but he could say for sure that he didn't have the same talent as her. His grandfather, the seeker, asked Noel to believe in him, and Noel did. Noel immediately started his training, which he thought would usually be gentle, but his grandfather disappeared because he truly transformed when training Noel. He yelled at him to wake up when he fell because the monsters wouldn't wait for him to get up. He said that no matter how much pain Noel was in, he had to stand up with his fighting spirit. When Noel still hadn't woken up, he asked how long he would stay there. His grandfather's attack was painful and strong, and when Noel didn't have time to fight back, he flew back and fell. His training was harsh and merciless, and Noel always faced the figure of a demon training the extraordinary seeker who wasn't afraid of death and wouldn't do any push-ups for an hour and run 20 kilometers. When he cried, he was ready to give up. His grandfather said that this wasn't the end, so he shouldn't cry. He thought he couldn't do this anymore, remembering that his parents died in an accident even before he realized it. And then his grandfather promised to never leave Noel alone and die alone, no matter what happened. Since then, his grandfather became his whole family, and others believed that he was abandoned without parents because of the curse of the monsters. They say that when his grandfather was a hunter, he killed too many monsters and everyone in his family died young because of the Noel curse. Noel pretended not to pay attention to all of this, but they kept teasing him every day. People surrounded Noel and picked up their sticks. One of them shouted that if you touch Noel with this, you can get the curse. Noel lay on the ground and didn't resist, and one of them asked what's wrong. Noel frowned and gritted his teeth in anger, and the boy noted what happened in his eyes. He asked why Noel didn't fight back if he didn't like it. He swung his stick and yelled that Noel couldn't do anything like that, and hit him, saying that the damn boy could only cry and roll on his cheek. Noel trembled in pain and anger, and his friends noticed that he was crying and asked if he really couldn't do anything except cry. But Neil's grandfather never forgave people like that and always defended his grandson no matter who beat them but didn't kill anyone. And in the end, he always told Noel his slogan. He sat with one knee beside Noel and put his hand on his head, saying that a real man couldn't let himself be underestimated like that. Noel had to be someone who didn't want to be looked down upon, to become a strong man. Remembering Noel during training, wiping away tears with his sleeve, firmly on his grandfather's knee and asking him to continue. His grandfather noted that Noel was thinking too long, and Neil remembered what he always told him, that monsters exploit human weaknesses, so if he relaxes during training and remains weak. Although he could become a seeker, he would do it quickly because he understood that his grandfather just didn't want him to die, and taught him against the broadcasting technique that he had been learning for 4 years. Later, he and his grandfather argued, and he managed to avoid his grandfather's attacks while occasionally landing his own punches. In the end, his grandfather commented that Neil had become a stronger thinker and had learned a lot in these 4 years. When he turned 15, he would officially be recognized as a seeker. He decided that even if he was a broadcaster, his goal now was to become a seeker who wouldn't lose to his grandfather. Thinking about this, he continued to practice with his grandfather. But one day, something irreparable happened. Grandfather woke up Noel and Noel, who were still sleepy, and asked what had happened. Grandfather hurriedly took them and held Noel in his arms as they ran out of the house, running through the city streets to the right place. Noel saw what was happening around him and exclaimed that it was the monster of the abyss. He remembered that the abyss was connected to the void through which the level of danger increased around 12 or 13, and now their city had become a top-class disaster zone. Grandfather said that if Noel was a seeker student, then he had to understand what was happening and told Noel not to worry. And at that moment, they approached a thick building. Grandpa then sat down next to Noel and asked him to listen to him. He said that no matter what the situation, should Noel leave from here. Noel asked if Grandpa would do it, and Grandpa answered that he would stall for time until help arrived. But Noel shouted that he was lying. He noted that the monsters from the abyss were already everywhere, and they couldn't escape from here. There was no way to know when help would arrive. Noel asked if that was why Grandpa went to fight alone. Grandpa said with fear that this abyss level was the 12, and among these level monsters, there was always a monster that was so strong, even called the Lord of Monsters. Noel started to say what would happen if he fought against such a monster alone, except for his monster. Grandpa interrupted his words and asked him not to underestimate it. He placed his hand on Noel's head and asked who he thought he was. Grandpa said that he was immortal and asked Noel not to worry because he would protect him in any way. Grandpa led Noel into the building and closed the door, not slamming it with his hands. Tears welled up in his eyes as he screamed and called out to Grandpa. He finally sat on the floor, pulling his knees to his chest, and soon the screams of the monsters could be heard. From their screams, he realized that their numbers were far greater than 100 or 200. And trembling, he asked himself how many monsters were there really. Noel was afraid to imagine the possible scenario if something happened to him and Grandpa. And he was no longer with Noel. He asked what he should do then. As time went by, the sound of the monster's voice subsided, and then the sound of a panic battle could be heard from behind the door, and Noel realized that the battle between his grandfather and God had already begun. He listened to those sounds with horror and shock and closed his eyes, thinking about his grandfather. The sounds continued for hours and suddenly stopped at one point, and the unpleasant air of the abyss began to disappear. Noel shouted with joy that his grandfather had won and ran down the street without listening to the cries of others asking him to stop. Noel saw the houses in ruins in a lifeless state. Tears of monsters appeared in his eyes as he saw his grandfather's mutilated body on the ground. His grandfather's legs and arms were missing, and the rest of his body was filled with terrible wounds. Enel ran towards him and knelt beside his grandfather, saying that his grandfather couldn't defeat his opponent at his age, and added that it was ironic that he was called immortal. Noel couldn't hold back his tears and cried. His grandfather's body said that his grandfather was also a crybaby like him. He noted that this was the end of his journey as a seeker, and said that while someone struggles to live, they always walk alongside death. They ask themselves if they still want to become a seeker. Grandpa notes that Noel will do it, following the same path as him. Neil looks sadly at his grandpa, remembering how as a child he decided to become a strong seeker like him. He remembers how he learned his lessons, how he practiced, and his grandpa's promise that he would never leave him alone. He also remembers his words about becoming someone who wouldn't be underestimated when becoming a strong man. He still cries and smiles, saying that of course he will become a seeker. It's already difficult for Grandpa to speak, but he laughs and says that no one is really his grandson. He suddenly says that he doesn't keep his promises and apologizes to Noel, adding that he will always love him. 2 years later, someone calls Neol and he turns around, narrowly avoiding the monster's attack. Noel furrows his brow and tells the others not to panic, advising them to dodge and attack because the monster's last blow was just a trick. The monster realizes their arrival, and Noel shouts that he will cause a disturbance. He tells Lloyd and Walter to attack the monster from both sides at the same time, and they shout that they won't do it. Tanya says that she will support them. Tanya answered that she understood everything, and people started taking her out, and the monster's order ran towards Noel right now, and he prepared to attack the thoughts that his grandfather promised, even though he had the weakest class, that he could still become the strongest seeker. Noel reminisced about his training sessions with his grandfather. He vividly recalled the moment when the forest was suddenly illuminated by a bright flash. It brought back memories of his childhood and the precious time he spent with his grandfather. Noel remembered how he made the decision to follow in his grandfather's footsteps and become a strong seeker, just like him. He also remembered the pride his grandfather expressed when Noel grew stronger. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind, reminding him that one always walks alongside death while striving to live. Noel couldn't forget his grandfather's question about whether he still aspired to become the promised seeker, the strongest of them all. As two people disembarked from the ship and announced their arrival, they marveled at the sight before them. They were in awe of the capital of Varon and the Tri-Empire. Their surprise grew when they spotted a carriage being pulled by 2 horses. They couldn't help but notice the airship and the representatives from various races. They exclaimed in amazement, acknowledging the truly impressive scene. One of them turned to the other and asked if everyone in this city carried weapons. His brother confirmed that indeed they did, and the second brother exclaimed that he already knew that. He compared it to other countries, stating that the Vernu Empire possessed the deadliest abyss. Curious, the older brother asked what exactly the deep abyss was. The man replied that he had already explained it to him before, and at that moment he bumped into someone. He apologized and Noel said it wasn't a big deal. Embarrassed, Noel shouted that she was a very beautiful girl and asked if they could get to know each other better. Noel asked himself what they would find there, noting that he was a man. He then thought that 2 years had passed since that day, and he had inherited his grandfather's ambition, and now he liked it. Previously, he lived in the capital, so that one day he could become the strongest seeker. He noted that there was only one problem, and asked himself how he could understand that he was better than everyone else. He decided that he would never lose, and of course, be the strongest. But this was not possible, because in battles there was always one class superior to the others. In some ways, there was no universal class. Noel thought that the closest thing to an ideal would be a warrior class like his grandfather, but even that had its limits. He thought with regret that his class had the worst personal fight performance among the others, and from all this, it became clear that a broadcaster alone could not become the strongest seeker. Noel was called by someone, and he thought he had decided everything for himself and gathered his strongest friends, so all he could do was follow his goal that came. He is closer and notes that it might be strange to be the strongest at the expense of others, but in his opinion, someone's potential is only revealed in a team, and the team will only be the strongest when the strongest representatives from different classes come together. He looks at Lloyd, a swordsman, Walter, a warrior, and Tanya, a healer in their team. He thinks they are the 4 members of their clan outside of the blue, and luckily Noel already has 3 very good seekers in his group. Someone said that now everyone finally has it gathered, they can explain it again. A woman said that they need a team to destroy the small vampires that have settled in the western part of an abandoned mine. She explained that after all the vampires are destroyed, the deadly rift will disappear. But the main goal of this task is to destroy the vampires. She extends her hand with a bag of coins and says this as a prelude, and afterwards she asks who among the men is the leader. Lloyd says it's him, and Noel thinks that the current leader of their team is Lloyd, not him. Because out of everyone in the team, he has the least combat experience, and there's nothing he can do about it. He realizes that in this task, he has a chance to gain real combat experience, and the team sets off, and the woman prays that they will be fine. Lucky Noel thinks that the hidden world is called Void, but there is another world where demons reside, and it connects Void and their world called the Abysses. If certain conditions are met, rifts can appear anywhere, and the demons that come from the Abysses cannot simply return to their world. The rift will continue to expand until the demon king from the Abysses kills humans who risk their lives to stop its spread, called Seeker. The team arrives and fights against the monsters that have started attacking. Noel shouts, calling for others to stop the monsters from surrounding them, and asks everyone to concentrate. Tanya says that Walter is responsible for logistics, and he is attacked by a monster with his weapon. Lloyd does the same, and watches how Lloyd and Walter fight the monster, saying that it is a low-level vampire, different from the usual vampires, and they cannot use magic. However, adding that instead makes the low-level vampires multiply rapidly because they can easily destroy the crowd. Walter, hearing this, asks again, and notes that all the vampires here are male. Neol confirms this, and explains that they are underlings and controlled by a puppeteer from afar. He says that although the lower vampires cannot use magic, their physical activity is so strong that they can crush a skull with their bare hands. One of the monsters rises from the ground and starts attacking again, but Tanya quickly attacks and cuts off its head. She winks at Noel and asks if it's true that the lower vampires will live as long as they have a head on their shoulders. Noel approves this, and Tanya smiles. Walter says that in this case, Tanya shouldn't kill the monster because she has everything under control. His suggestion is that if the puppeteer dies, then his subordinates will surely die too. He wants to offer to attack the puppeteer, but Noel interrupts her and explains that this is a ranked battle, and killing the puppeteer is already a rank, so they can't do it. Walter suggests that it's better to kill all the subordinates before going to the puppeteer. Noel understands, and then notes that support has started giving orders. He asks if he can decide for himself what to do, and suddenly Noel notices another monster approaching them and shouts for everyone to run back. The monster lands on the ground, and a large amount of dust rises into the air. Lloyd, Walter, and Tanya run to the side and curse when the dust reaches them. As they look around, they see the puppeteer, and Lloyd calls out to Noel in horror, asking what they should do. But Noel doesn't move, and Tanya senses something and asks what the smell is. Lloyd shouts that it's leaking gas from the cave and asks if it's dangerous. He says that regardless, they need to divert the vampire's attention, so he asks Tanya to meet him. The puppeteer swings his leg and kicks the ground, sending more dust and rocks towards them. Tanya screams in pain and covers her face with her hands, while Noel clenches his teeth and closes one eye. Walter screams and rushes to attack the monster, but it dodges and Walter shouts that it's much stronger than the subordinates. Lloyd thinks that the gas is causing Noel to stop moving, and they can't hold on without the broadcaster, so if this continues, they won't last long. People keep calling Noel and asking what they should do. They scream that he always tells them what to do, but now he can't move and fight with them. The puppeteer asks them to wake up because they need him. The team shouts at him to at least say something and ask if he's the broadcaster or who doesn't think about it and remember how during the distribution he was told that the broadcaster was the weakest class. How in their childhood they mocked him while laughing, saying that he couldn't do anything except after that he remembers his grandfather's words that he needs to become like that. Those who weren't even considered by them look down on Walter, who is currently fighting the monster, and Noel, who finally managed to move and take out that device that looks like a gun and put a potion bottle into it, shouting so they wouldn't dare to underestimate him. He runs towards the monster and thinks that he's no longer the same as before and must fulfill his promise to his grandfather, so he will show everyone how the broadcaster fights. He puts his hand on the ground and uses the formation technique, which is a broadcaster skill that enhances team actions. Noel uses his offensive tentacle to attack and instructs Lloyd and Walter to move back, thanks to the built tactics. The result and consequence of all actions taken under the broadcaster's command increase by 25%, and Lloyd and Walter do everything as instructed. The monster attacks again, and Walter shouts that somehow it didn't work out very well. Noel uses his broadcaster skill, Fighting Spirit, which increases the physical and magical strength of allies by 25%. He ordered Tanya to update buffs, and Lloyd and Walter attacked again. Tanya shouted that she would do everything Lloyd noted, and Walter asked her to rely on him. Lloyd and Walter attacked, and the puppeteer jumped back. Suddenly, Tanya exclaimed that it was a trap, and everyone turned around to see that 3 subordinates had been hiding in the darkness all this time. Tanya shouted that the low-level vampire was now with the puppeteer, but he didn't interrupt her words, saying not to panic and to keep fighting. He looked at his watch and thought if he had calculated everything correctly, it would be 18 seconds. Noel shouted that she would take care of her subordinates and asked Tan to continue updating buffs, while Lloyd and Walter prepared to deliver their strongest attack. As the countdown approached Neol, he took a deep breath and shouted for the monster to stop using its roaring skill, which immobilized the enemy for a few moments, and the monsters froze in the air. Noel realized this and pulled out a magical weapon similar to a pistol, thinking it was weak against demons, but it was the only way for him to launch his attack. He observed that there were 2 more freezing bullets remaining, aimed to the left, and fired his shot with immense strength. However, he missed witnessing this as he realized that in 3 seconds, 18 seconds would elapse, and in 4 seconds, the monster's hand would reach its neck. For now, everything was going according to his plan. He shot the puppeteer and immediately noticed that he had caught its attention. He shouted to Lloyd and Walter to attack, and they both raised their weapons, proclaiming that the monster was already finished. They began attacking Noel, assuming that there were many underlings of the puppeteer due to the high birth rate of low-level vampires. However, if the puppeteer died, its underlings would also perish. Currently, Lloyd and Walter reached the puppeteer, and the monster let out a scream. At that moment, the 18 seconds had ended, and its underlings started moving again. Lloyd and Walter swiftly finished off the puppeteer, and Tanya shouted in triumph, declaring that they had succeeded in killing it. He turned towards Noel and expressed his success, but noticed one of the monsters approaching him, ready to attack. Lloyd and Walter also glanced in that direction and saw Noel looking terrified. However, in the final moments, the monster let out a scream of pain and was thrown back. Noel collapsed to the ground and exclaimed that they had done it. Everyone knew, and it had only taken 18 seconds. He thought it was challenging to be the bait when he inhaled the gas, but there was no other way to win. He believed that his mental determination allowed him to remain calm throughout. Overall, the power of all allies increased tenfold as they launched their attacks, and thinking that this is his strongest technique, however, it is not perfect because after the allies launched an attack that they received a great advantage for some time, they could not fight. Noel fought happily and was able to do everything correctly. The second is their teamwork, which he thinks is very good. Lloyd noted that it is not too safe unless Walter is not happy to say that there is no need to worry about it. Tanya added that it is amazing, and Noel smiled satisfactorily. The battle is over, and everyone is tired. Noel thinks that this is how a commentator fights as a commentator. Noel wants to become the strongest seeker and fulfill his promise to his grandfather. Every day, together with his comrades, he will one day approach this goal. Then the team sat in a cafe and celebrated their victory. They drank low-level vampire cleansing. Walter asked the waiter to bring 3 crazy beefsteaks and more beer. Lloyd asked for boiled duck and pancreas. Tanya asked for pork ribs and more beer. Walter raised his hand in his place, holding a large cup, and shouted that they had done a good job because they had earned 500.000 fil. He noted that this is the highest amount they have ever earned, and is very happy because they were able to do it so far. Noel thought it was a lot of 500.000 fil to eradicate the vampire les. He is also happy that they have obtained so much. But in reality, they should have gotten more because the materials obtained from the lower vampires have recently started to increase, and if they had negotiated wisely, they could have gotten more. They will negotiate to at least get 500,000 fil more. But because the team believes they will receive 5 million for the job, and asking for another 500,000 would be a bad thing, they oppose it. Noel is unable to negotiate. Lloyd says they have only been doing this for a year, but they have achieved good results, so they need to fight for better tasks because they are almost equal in power to rank as one of the visitors who heard their conversation is not happy to call them newcomers. But seeing Noel, he looks at him seriously and turns silent, nervously sipping his cup. Noel tries the food and thinks it's very disappointing, which Walter notices. Noel asks what's wrong, and Walter adds that he's always ready to listen. Noel reluctantly tells Walter to leave him alone, and Walter assumes that Noel is still upset because they didn't want to take the other 500,000. Noel tells him not to worry about it and keep drinking beer. Walter says it's not good to be so fixated on money because that's how it is. Seekers should be role models. He adds that NL's beloved grandfather would say the same thing. Noel thinks that on the contrary, seekers always need money because it is needed for everything, whether it's buying things or fixing equipment. Walter couldn't help but notice the money Noel was asking for. In his mind, he wondered what Noel knew about his grandfather's belongings. He thought that Noel must not be satisfied with it, although it wasn't pleasant. There was no point in arguing about it, so he said that he didn't hold any grudges or anything like that, because they had already resolved the issue. Tanya stopped bringing up the topic, and added that Noel was very focused on money, but he wanted to do better for them. He asked if it was true. Noel smiled, and Walter reluctantly placed the cup on the table and yelled at Noel to wipe that stupid smile off his face because he was angry at him and wouldn't look at him. Walter shouted that greed was bad for the reputation of their whole group. He told Noel to always think about the consequences of his actions and angrily asked him not to say such nonsense because Walter himself was like that. He yelled throughout the bar, around 5 million. Walter told Noel to stop playing the victim by saying things like that and asked if it felt strange to be happy about a deserving gift. He added that unlike Noel, he didn't try to add extra rewards that weren't rightfully his. Noel said so and blamed himself for everything, as always. Walter asked Noel with annoyance what kind of attitude he had towards him. He added that he was 2 years older than Noel, and Noel asked him not to make him laugh, and noted that he was using his age to prove that he was right. Walter gritted his teeth in anger and warned Noel not to joke with him like that. Because he can only give orders from behind, he smiles and says that it's always very easy for him to do tasks thanks to Mr. Walter. He starts talking to him with excessive respect, and notes that in Walter's mission, he fights like a fierce demon, and therefore he is very great and more useful than an incompetent person like Noel, who only knows how to give orders. Walter smiles brightly and asks if Noel is ready to die, and if Walter can no longer receive praise because of his pride. He asks if it's not bad when the seeker is not a role model. Noel assumes that Walter wants him to become Pat. He nods and notes that as he gets older, only Walter's body grows, but his character remains the same as a child. Walter swings and shouts that he will kill Noel. Noel tries to hit him, but Noel dodges in time. He runs towards Walter and shouts that he accepts his challenge because he is tired of his insensitivity. Noel adds that Walter should not think that he can win the fight while drunk just because he is a vanguard. Walter and Noel are stopped by Lloyd, who stands between them and says that's enough. Tanya leans her elbow on the table and rests her chin on her palms, saying that they are both very foolish. Lloyd approaches Tanya and puts his hand on her shoulder, saying that she shouldn't say that. Tanya looks at Lloyd and falls in love, and Walter notes his displeasure because Lloyd is with Tanya again. Sometime later, there were no offers to open the bag and share the rewards. He held the pen in his hand and counted that 2 million Phil would be used for the Walter Group's funds. Walter was angry, and Noel explained that after the battle with the low-level vampire, Lloyd and Walter's equipment became unusable. Even if they went to the familiar weapon warehouse and got a discount for repairs, it would still cost around 2 million. Plus, they needed additional funds to refill their pistol bullets, and the other 3 team members were surprised by how much was needed. Noel said that considering all this, everyone would receive around 250,000 Phil. Tanya took the coin and expressed disappointment because there were only so many. Lloyd said that there was no need to be so upset because each of them didn't receive that much, but their group's treasury continued to grow. He added that if they took similar orders, they could get the same amount as requested. Lloyd was right and didn't mention requests like this were quite rare, so they wouldn't do it often. Getting tasks like this frequently, he explained, was not something they received from the country, but from another clan. He added that if they didn't have it, they would face their own problems in completing the desired task. Lloyd said that it was true, and no one thought that the request to clean up the deadly abyss was managed by the government, and usually such tasks were only transferred to the clan. But this time it wasn't the clan, so they could only carry out tasks related to the abysses that they received from the clan. He noted that the task of the Seekers was to clean up the deadly abysses, and regardless, such tasks brought good money and honor on the other side. At one point, he continued to say that in order to succeed and develop as a Seeker, you had to join an existing clan and ask Lloyd how much it currently cost in the group's treasury. Lloyd looked at the piece of paper where the writing was written down and said that it included the money received from this task, amounting to around 12,800 Phil. Noel suggested this to create a clan, and others wondered if he was serious about it. Noel explained that if they formed their own group, unexpectedly, it could become a clan, and they could receive tasks to clean up the deadly abyss directly from the government. So, if they were thinking of expanding the group, now was the right time. Lloyd and Walter continued to stare at Noel in surprise, and he once again proposed to create a clan, which surprised his colleagues even more. Lloyd said that Noel should be aware that in order to create a clan, they needed to provide 20 million Phil. He said that he didn't say he understood this, and added that over the past year they have become stronger and more famous, so it's not beneficial for them to continue working under subcontract. Walter asked if it's true that it would cost 20 million to create the clan. Tanya justified this and explained that it's mandatory insurance in case the clan doesn't meet the demand because as time goes by, the level of danger increases and it becomes more difficult to resolve. He added that this is caused by the rule that the cost of opening new land missions conducted by other clans is borne by the clan that failed in the mission. Lloyd said he understands everything and wants to add something, but Noel interrupts his words and says that he will invest the remaining 7.2 million Phil. It is very surprised, and Walter says it's a lot of money. Noel adds that they have to pay it back when the clan grows, and he actually doesn't want to give this money because when he thinks about the future, even just for himself, his intention is to use the funds he inherited from his grandfather. Noel thinks that this is actually not an amount he can invest without hesitation, since there is very little left of that fortune he inherited. He decided that it wasn't just a silver pistol, because its protective coat was also an exceptional high-class item. Noel noted that this coat was made from the incredibly durable and tough muscle fibers of a black dragon beast from abysses. He remembered it when he first became a Seeker. Besides the knowledge book from which he acquired skills, he bought high-quality equipment and all sorts of items. After the incident, he thought about the money he had given to the servants so that they could live normally. Besides the money he needed before becoming a seeker, it turned into a substantial amount. He loudly noted that it created his own clan, which would be more profitable than continuing to work as a subcontractor. He also thought that if the 3 people who owed him were likely, no one would mind if he took on the role of leader. Noel knew it was dangerous, but he thought it was worth it to fulfill his ambition. Lloyd asked about the base he mentioned. In order to create an approved clan, they had to have a building in the capital that could serve as a base, and the land prices were very high. Even if they rented the place, the monthly rent would still be quite high. Noel asked him not to worry because he knew a place where they could rent for cheaper. Lloyd wanted to refuse, but he didn't do it because it was time to say anything. Tanya said that she knew Noel was serious, but added that it didn't need to be done impatiently, because if they formed a clan now, they wouldn't be able to manage it properly. She asked why it wasn't explained that they were still new to their C-rank tasks, and they were still young. Lloyd was 17, Walter was 18, and Noel was 16. She added that even though they were already adults, they were still children in society, and no matter how strong they were, they wouldn't be able to succeed in everything without being asked. Tanya asked why she said she had already said this, and Noel asked when would be the best time for this. She asked with annoyance how it could be done. It took years to make her believe they could do it, and what guarantee was there for success? She noted that until they formed their clan, they would still be new to leadership, no matter how much time passed. Noel added that as a seeker, she spent all her time studying clans, so she had all the necessary knowledge. But she didn't believe that they could succeed just with this, because it required a lot of experience that could only be gained from actually managing a clan, and this was not something that could be obtained just by standing still in life. Lloyd acknowledged that there was truth in her words, as experience could not be gained unless they tried. Besides, the most profitable jobs were related to the gap run by the government, but he asked if the country was ignoring them because they were given jobs at what age. If they create the Noel clan, they say that the opposite is true because they will get a good job, precisely because that's how it is. Young Lloyd asked, confused about what he was doing, meaning Noel said they were still young and beautiful, which is very important. Lloyd admitted that he didn't understand what Noel got. Noel explained that Lloyd was a swordsman and his attractive face stood out among the rough crowd of seekers. He was also liked by women and ranked 8th on the imperial scale of humans who could rely on him. He approached Tanya and said that he was sweet, humble, and friendly, besides his profession as a popular healer among men. Then Noel talked about Walter and noted that he was a warrior, and his wild charm was what attracted the opposite sex. He added that he had heard about lewd people attacking him by saying that they wanted to make him sweat and flex their muscles with him. Walter asked, confused, if Noel was praising or hating him. Noel said that the government encouraged seekers. In other words, they wanted more citizens to become seekers, and asked what category would excite and motivate young people who dream of becoming seekers. The seekers assumed that this would happen to those who were stronger and lived the right lifestyle, and added that it was the charm that could be noticed at first sight that was far more important. Lloyd understood what Noel meant, and Noel confirmed it, and added that youth and beauty were what was considered beautiful. He said that famous seekers always became some kind of idols, and if they were not only strong, but also being young and beautiful would make it easier for the country to support them as some kind of advertisement. Walter asked if they would be in a more advantageous position, because they are still young and beautiful. He didn't explain that in order to receive real preference opportunities, it is also important to add that successful clans often get lucky with beautiful representatives. Tanya gripped her dress tightly in her hands and admitted that she couldn't express it in words, but this acting made her feel as if she really was selling herself. She said she couldn't do it, and Noel looked at Lloyd and Walter and asked if they agreed. Walter smiled and said he did, tired of working as a subcontractor, so he suggested that she start her own clan because if she could make more money, then she could drink as much good alcohol as she wanted and even sleep with as many beautiful women as she desired. Walter asked if that wasn't amazing. Tanya angrily asked him to stop and asked if he couldn't joke during such a serious conversation. Walter said he was serious and asked what's wrong with wanting fame and money. He added that even though he's a bit different, it's almost the same for him, and Tanya exclaimed angrily, and Walter asked if she would be his girlfriend and not Lloyd, what would happen if she agreed. Tanya looked at Walter in horror, but Lloyd slammed the table with his palm, interrupting Walter's words. Walter awkwardly said that it was just a joke and asked Lloyd not to be angry, but added that he was serious about the clan. Noel thought with displeasure that love affairs within the team would not lead to any good and would only be a source of problems. He concluded that it was now 2 against 1 and turned to Lloyd, asking him as the leader to express his opinion. Lloyd admitted that it was difficult and asked if they really wanted to immediately organize the clan, regardless of Noel's request. Noel apologized and said he wouldn't compromise, so if he said he really wanted to postpone it, he had to return the money from the treasury, and then he would leave the group. Lloyd said it didn't matter to call him and ask if it was wise. He admitted that it was not wise to deny it, but added that it was instead futile to run in place. He believed that they should take a different path, even if it was different from their own. He decided that he should say this again when they formed the group, and admitted to having a dream, which was to become a seeker beyond immortal. Lloyd thought about it, and finally agreed to create a new clan. Tanya ran towards him and asked if he was serious. Lloyd said that they would do it sooner or later. Lloyd looked at Tanya, his eyes widening in fear, while Noel observed them in confusion. Lloyd said that his decision as the leader remained the same as he had said, and assumed that Noel didn't mind. Noel admitted to being happy that Lloyd agreed. Walter told Noel it was terrible. Lloyd and Tanya ran away with their money. He asked where and when he found the letter. He answered that he had just found it and explained that last night at the bar he had heard about a good request and went to Lloyd's room to discuss it with him. There, he received a letter from the owner of the inn where Lloyd lived, asking if Walter asked when Lloyd left. Walter replied that Lloyd did it just before 8 p.m., and Noel thought that the Imperial Capital Gate closed at 8 p.m. and opened at 5 a.m. In other words, it was likely that Tanya and Lloyd left the capital in the darkness right before the gate closed. Noel noted that Lloyd and Tanya didn't use horses because they could be tracked that way, so they would continue on foot. He grinned and said that they couldn't go far, and if they asked the gatekeeper who opened the gate, Lloyd and Tanya would come and chase them on fast horses. Most likely they would be caught quickly. Walter strongly suggested that he go and look for the gatekeeper now, but Noel raised his hand and asked him to wait, asking what Walter would do after finding the gatekeeper. Walter exclaimed that he would find Lloyd and defeat him, admitting that he wouldn't rest until he did it. Noel said that Walter would defeat Lloyd, and then they will make up and ask if Walter really thinks like that. After that, they will become more united. He said it sounded like a scenario created by Muscular Fairy, and Walter angrily asked what Noel said. No, he asked if Walter listened to it. He said if Lloyd is an idiot like Walter, he would be desperate. And if the situation gets worse, not to mention the dispute, it will turn into a fight. He asked if Walter understood this, and added that the money Lloyd embezzled was already gone. But the 2 prominent men should be willing to pay it back in full, even though there are 2 other members who decide to run away. Noel noted that this is a perfect betrayal and severance communication in an instant, and asked Walter if he is sure he can defeat Lloyd. Walter stared at Noel in surprise, and then shouted that if he had N buffs, he could definitely win, and asked if he was capable of fighting him, remembering that killing the healer first is the basis of fighting against people. And seeing the cursed expression on Walter's face, he finally said he understood everything without adding that even if they win, they won't get their money back, so it's just a waste of time. And Tanya and Lloyd ran away because they knew it. Walter cursed and asked if they would really let him be like this. Neil asked him not to be an idiot and grinned evilly, saying that his principle is to pay 100 times more so that he is willing to make Tanya and Lloyd not be underestimated. Walter looked at her with confusion, and just then the waiter entered and said that he would do the laundry, so he asked Noel to give him dirty clothes. He noticed that Noel was standing without a jacket on top of his body and exclaimed in admiration, "Noel, as usual, he's beautiful and slim." She dropped the laundry basket and assumed that she had interrupted him in the middle of his training. Noel asked Mary angrily if it was possible that she caught them in the middle of it. Walter and N looked at her in confusion, and Mary, embarrassed, said that the muscular, half-naked man was his handsome and muscular brother, and added that there was nothing wrong if two men loved each other behind closed doors. Noel nervously asked what she said, reminding Mary that she was there to pick up dirty laundry, and Mary took the basket and clothes in her hands, running off shouting enthusiastically that it was indeed amazing Walter. He asked what was wrong with this strange child, as she didn't speak like that. Later, Noel and Walter were walking down the street, and Walter asked why they were going to the bar. Noel confessed that he didn't understand, and Noel called Walter stupid. But he's not that foolish, and he's also an excellent soldier. Walter asked for clarification, wondering what it meant. He acknowledged that they were both skilled in their respective roles, and in other words, Walter should trust him to handle it. Walter questioned if Noel had ever made a mistake in managing their group before. Noel urged Walter to have a little faith in him, and reluctantly, Walter agreed with a frown. They entered the bar, and Noel loudly declared that he would order for everyone. The bar patrons glanced up, their attention drawn to Noel, who mentioned Lloyd and Tanya. The group members outside had stolen from their treasury and escaped. Now, Noel wanted them to find and capture Lloyd and Tanya alive, promising a reward of 2 million. The bar patrons exchanged looks, some grinning while others appeared surprised. Walter, horrified, asked Noel what he was trying to accomplish by revealing this information. Noel explained that he intended to hire these people to catch Lloyd and Tanya because they were incapable of doing it themselves. Walter admonished Noel for making such an order in public, but he wouldn't retaliate as long as it wasn't done openly. This way, they wouldn't know who was searching for Tanya and Lloyd. At that time, a man ran up to Noel and asked if Noel really gave away 2 million fel. Noel swore that he would pay as promised, and the man said that then the lightning strike team would receive the Noel order because Tanya and Lloyd were famous. But without Noel, they were like a delicious piece of cake. He asked if Noel and Walter knew where Lloyd and Tanya might be heading. Noel admitted that he didn't even have an idea, but added that Lloyd left the imperial page for the capital right before closing. The man realized that Noel thought they had left. Another seeker also received order, and Noel asked if anyone else wanted it. He said that the early bird catches the worm, and at that moment, someone called him. Noel turned around and saw a man who said there was something he wanted to discuss about the Neol thought sequence. He had hit the jackpot with this man's belongings, and asked if there was something they couldn't discuss here. The man admitted that there was such a thing and asked if Noel could come behind the bar. When they arrived there, the man said he knew where Lloyd and Tanya were and explained that on his way home from work, he saw a few people who looked like them. But after what Noel said, he was sure they were the ones who made Walter unable to stand it. And he asked loudly where they were. The man said that he wouldn't tell them for free, and asked if the reward was really 2 million. He justified this, and said that if what the man said was true, then he and his group should immediately go and ask why the man didn't do it. The man replied that this was a situation, and Noel suggested that it would be beyond the man's power to capture both of them. He added that it was pointless to know the location if they couldn't capture Lloyd and Tanya, and suggested that the man wanted them to work together. The man confirmed this, and said that Lloyd and Tanya were very powerful. He added that if they succeeded together, he didn't expect the full reward that it offered, which was 1.6 million. But Noel didn't listen to his words and said that he would pay 500,000 to the man asking angrily again. Noel said that if the man needed their help, he considered the reward of 500,000 acceptable. The man exclaimed that 500,000 was too little, and asked for 1.5 million, calmly repeating that he would indeed give 500,000. Walter shouted that this man was the source of information and asked if Noel understood him, saying that everything was fine and thinking that usually people like this were greedy for money, so he would be on their side until they bought it from the man. Currently, he was offered 1.4 million, but Noel continued to offer only 500,000. The man told him to stop being stubborn because they needed his help. Noel explained that his help was welcomed, but it can be done without it because many other groups have already received orders, so if he waits for one of them to send it, Lloyd and Tanya said that if their money is stolen, they should immediately capture Tanya and Lloyd and say that it doesn't matter how they are able to do it because the other searchers will waste a lot of time without their information and ask. So he frowned and said that he didn't intend to give anything to the man, and said that if he didn't like it, he would pretend like this conversation never happened. He asked what the man would do, not answering that he could leave if he opposed him, and the man knelt, Disaster saying that he agreed to 500,000. Noel thought the man was weak and asked where Tanya and Lloyd were. The man said they went to the village of Karnat or the village of Yulin because he met them on the road near the southern gate. Noel told the man to gather his group and wait for him and Walter because he was not done with Walter's business yet. Walter asked what kind of unfinished business it was, if it couldn't be changed to him, and grinning, said that he would do it, tell him later. Later, to chase Lloyd and Tanya, who had embezzled the team's money and escaped from Noel, Walter left the imperial capital with those who gave them information about Tanya and Lloyd's whereabouts. Walter remembered how empty it was before they left, saying that if Walter couldn't bring himself to fight Lloyd and T, then he should stay here because he wanted to leave even without him. Walter regretted leaving with all his heart. Not far from the imperial capital in the village of Karnat, Lloyd and Tanya prepared to prepare for death. And suddenly, Lloyd heard Noel asking if he was really dating in a village like that. He noted that Lloyd had exceptional taste and looked at Noel in horror and surprise, shouting his name. Noel used a deafening scream and ordered them not to move. They froze, and at that moment, another seeker ran towards them. Lloyd shouted Tanya's name in horror, and one of the soldiers pulled him aside while the others surrounded Lloyd. He managed to move and drew his sword for battle. He saw several seekers surrounding him, their angry faces, and threw his sword, saying that he surrendered. Walter ran to Lloyd and asked why he betrayed them. Lloyd lowered his head and said that he regretted it, but Walter interrupted his words and forbade Lloyd from saying that he regretted not approaching them. He turned to Lloyd and said that he understood the essence after reading that letter, and asked what happened to the money received to clean up the vampire's lair, and also with the money from their treasury. Lloyd closed his eyes and apologized, admitting that he had spent it, and asked if this was really an investment. Once again, Lloyd admitted that he used that money to pay off debts. NL realized that it was a bad investment, and that it was a lie. It is assumed that Lloyd actually lost his money trying to find out what game Lloyd was playing by listing options, but in the end he said it didn't matter anymore because even though Lloyd had the destiny, he also had to know the lower price of vampire materials skyrocketed, and he was like Noel trying to ask for a bigger reward if he knew about it. NL said that Lloyd knew it by borrowing money from dangerous people because he lost gambling, and suggested that's why Lloyd had a lot of debt. He asked if he was wrong, and Lloyd said he regretted it, and Tanya stood silently with a sad expression, bowing her head. Walter grabbed Lloyd's collar and pulled him closer, shouting that he was a bad person because their lives were at stake because of him. He asked if Lloyd thought it was to spend it at the casino. Lloyd shouted that they didn't know how difficult it was to be a leader. He said he wanted him to take the money, but before he realized how much debt he had accumulated, he couldn't do anything about it. Lloyd said that Noel and Walter could also criticize him if they wanted, but asked if they had the right to do so. He said it was up to them who imposed the role and responsibility of leadership on him before, and only if it was comfortable and convenient. However, Lloyd didn't have time to finish the conversation because Walter pushed him and threw him back, swinging his leg and about to hit Lloyd's face, but he managed to dodge at the last moment. Noel remembered Lloyd asking if they had the right to blame him, and said he was the one who wanted to be a leader. He asked about the pressure of being a leader, and asked if they should forgive Lloyd. Noel doesn't care about what he's doing because he has his reasons. Noel says the only reason Lloyd got into debt is because of gambling, because he's a loser. Noel keeps beating Lloyd and calling him an incompetent idiot. Lloyd asks Noel to stop, admitting that it's all his fault, and saying he can't do this anymore. He lies on the ground, and Noel tells him not to pretend to be weak, adding that if Lloyd wants forgiveness, he should try to withstand 1,000 more punches. And if he does, at least no one will want to listen to him apologize. Walter witnesses this, shocked and scared, and remembers how he asked Noel if he could fight Lloyd. Noel answered that he could, even though it would be a battle to the death. Walter says Noel is cruel, but Noel doesn't answer and just smiles faintly. Walter grabs Noel and suggests they leave everything as it is. Noel asks why, and Walter also asks Noel to stop and forgive Lloyd. Noel asks if Walter wants to take Lloyd's place so he can defeat him. Walter says he won't forgive Tanya just like that because she's a woman, and adds that he believes in gender equality. Tanya says in horror that it's not her problem what he means, and Noel says he will explain it clearly to her because it seems like she can't understand the situation. He says Tanya is just as guilty, and suggests that she also gambled with the team's money with Lloyd, because he wouldn't run away with her if that wasn't the issue. Tanya screams that he's wrong, and that he should think it's fair that he shouldn't leave Lloyd alone. Noel repeats that she will ask again, and ask Tanya to honestly admit everything. Tanya admits that she was also played, but adds that it was Lloyd's fault, because she would definitely win if he had lent her more money. It all happened because Lloyd kept playing alone. Tanya opens her eyes wide in horror and asks if this is really her confession. She realizes that Noel has used the mind control skills on her and asks if it's true. Noel admits to using it and asks what Tanya wants to ask her. She knows what she has done. Tanya screams that using skills to control someone's mind can cause chaos in society, so if someone uses it for their benefit, they will be sent to jail immediately. Noel answers that they definitely won't turn a blind eye to this, but Noel says that this would be the case under normal circumstances, unless Tanya and Lloyd are criminals who stole team money, and according to imperial law, the use of skills that affect the consciousness of society is allowed if it allows criminals to confess their crimes. Noel says, in other words, she won't be accused of any crime. Tanya trembles and looks at Noel with fear and announces that the punishment for kidnapping is set at 10 years of forced labor. She congratulates Lloyd, and Tanya becomes the official criminal and says that she is a proud former ally of both of them. She hears someone approaching her and says that the discussion is over. The man who helped them says it was a good show and thanks Noel for it, noting that she was ready, but asks her to hurry up and give them the promised reward of 500,000 fil. The man asked if Noel would answer him, not saying that he would settle the account with the man, and asked him to wait here like a good child, saying that he would not wait any longer because they also had their own business. So Noel had to hurry up and pay them what he owed. Noel said that he needed him to wait a little longer as the money would soon come, and the man was not happy, asking what kind of nonsense he was talking about. He said that if Noel didn't have the money, then he had to give it to him. He ran towards Noel, reaching out his hand for his pistol, but Noel intercepted the man's hand and turned it aside, telling him not to touch the silver with his hand, which smelled like squid. The man shouted that Noel had deceived him, and Noel asked him not to do it, calling him a liar and repeating that he would pay the money he asked for. The man really thought he could easily rob him. Noel's broadcaster said it was embarrassing and added that his bare-handed fighting skills were better than Lloyd and Walter's. Suddenly, something appeared in the distance, and Walter noticed it, asking what it was. He said he had arrived, and at that moment a carriage pushed by horses approached. A man approached them and said that the countryside was very dusty, or rather, smelled like rotten horse manure. The seekers looked towards the man getting off the cart and asked in horror if this man was really a slave trader. They knew that it was Finocchio Barghini, and Fino smiled and apologized for making them wait. Lloyd asked in horror if they really said that he was a trembling trader slave and looked at Noel with fear, wondering what he would do to them. He seemed angry towards them and thought that wherever there was light, there would always be shadows and a prosperous empire. Not exempt from this was the house of the illegal mafia organization among these organizations, the largest gang being the Luciano family, which had branches in other countries. And although they were involved in illegal activities such as extortion, gambling, violence, and illegal substances, they also had a great influence on ordinary people. And because they had connections within the royal family, they could be considered the shadow rulers of the capital. One of the youngest members of the Luciano family, as well as the dawn of a subsidiary family of the Barghini family, was Finocchio Barghini, elegant and vulgar, cheerful and cruel, generous and cunning. He was pacifist and meticulous, recorded Finocchio's entire life, consisting of two extremes, and because of that, he was also called Finocchio Crazy. He said he wanted to get straight to the point, but asked if Noel had permission from the two of them. Noel answered that it was not a problem and frowned, saying that he was selling Lloyd and Tanya as their slaves. Noel looked at them in horror, and Walter remembered that Noel had once said that he would tell him something, which he now realized was the exact reason why he left before they did. Not saying it as he expected, Lloyd and Tanya had no money left, and to get their money back, they spent time. He decided to call his friend and explained that they would sell Tanya and Lloyd to get their money back. Noel asked Finocchio to find them a good owner, and he told Noel to rely on him, exclaiming that he would start checking the goods. Lloyd and Tanya screamed and asked them to stop the bad joke. They asked why they had no choice but to become slaves and asked if they didn't want it. They shouted, "Of course not," and Noel said at that time there was no choice but to surrender it to the military police. He reminded them that for such a kidnapping they faced 10 years of forced labor and asked if they knew the survival rate for prisoners who were hardly fed and forced to work in hellish mines. He said it was only 2%. Lloyd and Tanya felt horrified at that moment. Finocchio checked Tanya and Lloyd and said that he believed it was better to be slaves who could still be picked up by Master Finocchio. He finished the inspection and approached Noel, exclaiming that he knew this, but added that they both had good and strong bodies without deformities, so they would be worth a lot. Noel thought that the average price of a slave in the capital empire was around 5 million phil, but considering their condition, Noel could get at least 10 million phil for them to enter. In this case, he could cover his share of 8,400,000 phil. Finocchio said that was the amount he was ready to give, and opened a small rectangular box in front of him. Noel pointed at it and angrily asked how he understood that Finocchio's offer was only 6 million. Noel asked why it was cheap. Finocchio apologized to Noel and explained that this was the reason for the price because it had not been announced yet, but soon the Holy Cross Church would issue a poverty decree. He said that in short, if you have extra money, donate it to the church. Noel thought that the Holy Cross Church was the largest religious organization in the empire that worshipped a creative God. He remembered that the anger of the gods was the same as betraying one's ancestors and denying oneself. There was no believer who could refuse the church, especially when the royal family respected tradition and formalism. He exclaimed unhappily that this was indeed true, which is why his clients started spending less money to pretend to be poor, and because of this, they had no choice but to do so, which greatly reduced the selling price. He asked if this was the reason for the overall price reduction. Finocchio confirmed this and said that when the order expired, he could buy Lloyd and Tanya at the normal price. He noted that he had only decided to arrange this at the wrong time and thought that Finocchio was not lying because even though he wanted to lie, he wouldn't lie about something that could easily be verified. He thought about the decision of poverty and realized that he still lacked research, and it was bad. Noel said that he understood everything because they were also in a difficult situation. Finocchio was very happy and exclaimed like that. He was very grateful to Noel for his understanding and acknowledged that he loved him. Noel added that he agreed to the price of 11 million phil, and Finocchio thanked him for being willing to accept 11 million and said that they could make a deal soon. But suddenly, he interrupted his words and realized that Noel had mentioned the price of 11 million phil. He asked why and raised the price by 5 million. Noel calmly answered him. Now the price has gone up to 12 million, and Finocchio asked unhappily who he is, saying Noel said the price is now 13 million, and Finocchio shouted for Noel to stop. Noel said, "It's around 14 million, and Finocchio wanted to say something, but NL interrupted his words and added that he would agree to reach 15 million. Finocchio grabbed his collar and asked if he really wanted to make a joke out of him. He yelled that it would be really bad if Noel wanted to eat pork, he could cook it here. Noel answered that if Finocchio bought Tanya and Lloyd for 15 million, he would make everyone think he bought them for 30 million. Finocchio asked if he was joking and wanted to increase the value of the product by falsifying the selling price. Noel explained that usually the value of a product in the market is determined by the interaction of supply and demand. Sometimes, on the other hand, the price of a product can determine its value in the eyes of others. The higher the price, the rarer the product will be considered, and therefore the desire to buy it will also increase. Noel said that for the main slave traders who bought it for 30 million, this value must be very high. If Pinocchio bought it for 30 million, he could sell them for 90 million. Noel noted that Tanya and Lloyd are very expensive, so it would be better for Pinocchio to raise their prices rather than trying to reduce them. Pinocchio thought for a moment, and then said that he would be honest, saying that if Noel is confident that they are a good fit, he would be more than happy to work with him. And he asked if he realized that they would both be finished if they knew. Noel asked if such risks meant nothing to him. Pinocchio suggested that there were some issues, and Pinocchio looked at Noel in surprise, throwing his head back and covering his face with his hands, saying that Noel was the only person in the entire empire who had ever tried to take money from him. He asked if Noel wanted to join him. Pinocchio's family promised that they would do it, pointing Noel as the leader. But Noel said that the seeker confessed and asked what Pinocchio's answer was. Pinocchio said that he would buy Lloyd and Tanya not for 6, but for 15 million. He mentioned Noel's name and said he would do it just this once. Noel thought the negotiation was over, and the money would cover the cost of the new team. The man noted with surprise and horror that the madness had disappeared from the crazy hole of negotiation, and Pinocchio pointed his finger at him, smiling wildly, and said that if he ever talked about what had just happened, not only he but also his family, lover, and all his friends would be fed to the pigs. He asked if the man understood this, and the man replied that he understood everything. Pinocchio said that this was amazing, turning to Noel and saying that this was the down payment he had promised of 500,000 fil. He said he would transfer the rest tomorrow to Noel's bank account and give Noel a bag of money. Noel threw it at the man and said it was his reward. He thought he had returned what was stolen and paid off his debt, so he had no reason to stay here anymore. Noel told Walter that they would be back. Tanya called Noel and asked if she had really decided to sell it. She asked with tears streaming down her face to save her because they were allies. Noel, without turning around, said that someone who spends other people's money on gambling is not their ally, and added that those who betray once will betray again. He said goodbye to Tanya and turned to Walter and asked for his help. Walter bowed his head and said he was very sorry, but there was nothing he could do. Tanya bowed and desperately asked Walter not to joke with her, angrily asking if he loved her. Tanya screamed that he had to help her and asked if he was really a virgin if he couldn't be useful in a situation like this. She screamed that it was hers, her head filled with goblin snot. And Walter listened to all this in astonishment, hoping he would die. Noel called Pinocchio's name and said he understood everything and ordered the others to follow him. Pinocchio reached out to Tanya, Lloyd, and Tanya, breaking free, screaming for Walter to die, and he called her by name after getting on the cart. Pinocchio kissed Noel and said, "Look, you'll see the train leaving." Noel told Walter that they had to go to the man who shouted that Noel was the weakest buffer. He shouldn't be arrogant just because of his connection with the mafia. Noel didn't even turn around to note that this wasn't the best insult because even Tanya did it better. He looked at the man and said that he could not fight without an ally, but even someone like him could make a lot of money. Then he asked if a man with a normal class had to work harder. The man cursed and shouted angrily that Noel was a demon who sold his friends into slavery. Noel wondered what the man would say, but decided to call Noel a demon and thought so for a seeker hunting demons. Calling his opponent a demon meant that this person was the most disgusting and weakest creature. With a loud voice, Noel said that this was amazing and decided to use this nickname and become the strongest seeker. A couple of days later, Walter decided to leave his house and head over to the bar. Once there, he met up with Noel, who placed a bag of money on the table beside Walter. Noel explained that it was the remaining amount from the fashion sale, and this was Walter's share. As Walter looked at the money, he couldn't help but feel conflicted. While they had managed to retrieve it, he wasn't exactly thrilled because it was money earned from selling allies. He couldn't shake the feeling that accepting it wasn't the most honorable thing to do. Nevertheless, Walter took the money, ordered a glass of his favorite whiskey, and started to drink. Noel noticed that he was getting drunk again and asked Walter about his plans for the future. Walter pondered for a moment and replied that first, they needed to find suitable replacements for Lloyd and Tanya in their group. He expressed his doubts about finding talented seekers who would be willing to join their less-than-stellar team. Walter wasn't satisfied with that prospect. Noel slammed his fist on the table and passionately declared that the four of them were an unbeatable force, and no one could truly replace Lloyd and Tanya. He argued that while they were talented, they were only C-rank talented, and there were plenty of seekers with similar abilities in the Imperial capital. Walter made it clear to Noel that he had already discussed this matter before, emphasizing that decisions based on emotions were foolish when it came to the serious job of a seeker. He expressed frustration, mentioning that Noel was hurt because of Tanya's true nature. Walter questioned if this was the truth, cautioning against being overly sentimental towards Tanya. When Walter confronted Noel, he was met with a calm response about enduring insults like a loyal dog. Walter was taken aback and wondered why Noel didn't express his loyalty in a more straightforward manner. As Walter raised his hand in anger, Noel seemed to challenge him to strike, suggesting it would make him feel better. Walter pushed Noel away, reflecting on the age and strength difference between them, pondering why Noel behaved in such a manner. Despite his frustration, Walter acknowledged that they needed new allies and questioned where they would find individuals willing to betray their own team. Noel defended their approach, stating that true strength would be recognized by the Seekers, and that the creature had been appropriately reprimanded for their errors. Walter sadly said that it was cowardly, and Noel said it was the only thing they should fear was not getting enemies, but not getting allies. He decided to do it to attract new members he needed to set policies for their team, and suggested the name Rising Scoundrels. Noel asked if it was as bad as he himself said it was bad, but considered better than Rebel Some People. Walter said that Noel was very strong, unlike him. He sadly added that indeed he was weak, and Noel looked at him asking if Walter was really going to leave the Seeker. He noted that Walter lacked mental toughness, but indeed, through many battles they did not want to have survived without him, so it didn't matter what Walter said. Noel knew how strong he was better than anyone else. Noel extended his hand to Walter and suggested starting over again, saying that replacing team members was common, and suggested they rebuild together out of the blue once again. Noel acknowledged that he needed Walter, but Walter gritted his teeth, bowed his head, and apologized, shouting that he no longer wanted to be a seeker. He admitted it. He regretted it very much. A few moments later, Walter left the house wondering what he should do after returning home. Suddenly, Walter heard something and turned to see Noel standing behind him. Walter asked what was wrong, assuming that Noel had come to see him dead, and Noel confirmed that indeed it was. Walter is grateful to Noel for this, and Noel accepts an object from his coat pocket and asks Walter to take it, saying it is a farewell gift that he gave Walter a bottle of whiskey. Walter asks if he really gave it to him. Noel notes that Walter won't have many chances to drink whiskey in his hometown, and Walter agrees. Noel waves goodbye to Walter and says that he has done what he wanted, saying goodbye to Walter and leaving. Walter watches after Noel and says that he still can't figure out if he is compassionate or indifferent. He asks if Noel knows that the person he loves the most is him. Walter thinks that Noel doesn't need a girlfriend, but an ally, and therefore there is no place to ask next to Noel. He remembers that when talking about love issues with Lloyd, they became a couple, and he asks himself if he came to talk to him about it at that time. Walter decides that it doesn't matter because he will still do it as a substitute for Noel. He takes a sip from his bottle and says that it's all as Noel said because there are many people who can replace him. And the only difference is Noel, because he is Walter's special one. He remembers spending time with the team and raises his bottle, saying that Noel is an unworthy leader. Tears stream down his face as he hopes and wishes, saying that he doesn't have to be the strongest seeker. Noel was walking down the street when suddenly he was approached by a man who asked if he was really going to attack him in public. Noel turned around and asked if it was time for them to go out. The man who helped Noel and his team came out, and the man shouted that Walter had left Noel behind. He said that now Noel was alone, and he would thank him for his insults. Noel smiled and said that the man was very proud if they were going to attack him alone. He said they were so cool that he was willing to commit suicide, and the man called Noel and shouted that he would regret it. Noel said that he would even pay attention to them and started fighting with his eyes closed. He asked them to hurry, and the man shouted for Noel to die. Noel rushed to attack while holding an object like a bomb in his hand, and as the attackers began to approach, he activated it, blinding the attackers with its bright light. The attackers fell to the ground, and Noel attacked the man who had knocked him down with such force that he lost consciousness. Noel noted that he wouldn't kill them since they were in the city, but he would instead use them to show everyone what would happen if they fought. He walked further, and he noticed a snake skin on the ground. He thought it was rare to see that in the city, and noted that snakes needed to shed their skin to grow stronger. Noel said that we need to shed our old skin to become stronger, and since that day. Beyond the Blue starts with the rebirth of a girl in a raincoat standing at the announcement board, reading the recruitment notice. She says that she finally found him, Noel Stalin, in the capital city of the kingdom, in the city of Eterai. One of the brothers tells the other that he wants him to find a girl. The second brother asks if he has someone in mind, and the first brother answers that there is no one yet, but he will find a girl like that because he will meet beautiful girls. He asks his brother if he really has a lot of friends. His brother notes that the black-haired girl they met near the gates of the city would be a good match for him. Another man replies that she is indeed very beautiful, but such beautiful girls are rarely seen, so it is unlikely they will ever meet again. Suddenly he jumps to the side and falls to the ground, asking his brother in horror if he has seen it. He says it was beautiful. They meet at the gate and immediately run inside. Confused, my brother asks what they are talking about. The second person replies that it was a man, not a girl. Noel runs with a heavy load tied to his back, thinking that every day at 5 a.m. he starts his morning training, regardless of how tired he was the day before. This training consists of 2 rounds of running around the city walls, a total distance of 50 kilometers, with a load of 3 people on his back, taking 2 hours. After this, Noel returns to his hotel, has breakfast, and trains his arm and leg muscles for another 2 hours because broadcasting skills can only affect team members. But Noel couldn't apply this to himself. He thought so. That's why broadcasters always need to keep themselves fit, because if he can't defend himself, he will become a burden and the monster won't allow it. A seeker like that will live long. Noel remembers some battles and thinks about it. He has lost all his people, but he won't give up and start over again. He decides that he will rise again no matter how many times he fails to one day create the strongest clan in the city, where people wish each other good morning and give each other gifts for their tasks and carry out their affairs. Someone said that no one will come again and he wastes time looking for new team members. Noel is sitting at a table with another man and says so, making too much noise. The man asks, should it be quiet at the bar? He says that it's daytime and at that time the bar can be used for recruiting. He repeats that no one wants to come because everyone at the level to enter here has already become a member of some kind of team or clan. He says that the chances of Noel finding a hidden talent are very small, and even if Noel finds a talent, there is likely to be some problem with this person on the other side of the team, so Noel won't be able to create an individual team. Noel is not happy because the man shouldn't care, and he placed one hand on Noel's shoulder and asked why he didn't just join the Thunderstrike team. The man said that they would gladly accept them, covering his face with his hand, saying that this person came to invite him to the girls' team sitting at the next table, asking the wolf to stop and switch to Noel, asking if the wolf was bothering any other girl who was also sitting at the table, remembering that the wolf asked to hand this one over to him. They did it, but now the wolf is bothering Noel instead of inviting him to the team. He noted that if the wolf doesn't invite anyone, another girl will join, adding that it's because the wolf is unable to think because the only strategy he knows is to do it. Please, he asked if it's true. The girl felt sorry for Noel and told the wolf about it, making the disgusted man from the wolf's team add that it's because the wolf is like that. He was rejected by the girl who worked in the flower shop. Wolf became angry and shouted at them to be quiet and not tell anyone that he had been rejected, saying that he had just started using his negotiation method, and one of the girls asked if this would really continue Noel. Suddenly, he said that he had changed his mind and agreed to join the team if they accepted his conditions. The wolf eagerly asked if this was true. He asked if the others heard him. The wolf exclaimed with joy that this was the power of his negotiation method, and at that moment, one of the girls with pointed ears pushed the wolf aside, and asked with an impatient smile what was there in his conditions. She leaned closer to Noel and admitted that they really wanted him to join them, so they would do everything possible to make him join them. Noel raised his thumb and said he only had one condition. He announced that he wanted to be the leader of the Thunderbolt team. The girl asked if everyone agreed. All the team members answered that they didn't oppose it, and the wolf angrily asked why they all agreed so quickly. He asked for his opinion. The wolf shouted that he was the leader, and the girl noted that NL was smarter than the wolf, no matter who the leader was. She asked if everything was okay with this. The wolf thought for a moment and said that when he said that, it might be true, but he interrupted himself and shouted that everything was wrong because he was the one who created the lightning strike, and that's why he should be the leader. One of the girls said it was very regrettable because she really wanted to go on an adventure with Noel. Another girl asked what Noel would do if he didn't get a team together. He said that he would then continue with recruitment, and the girl asked if he had anyone in mind on the topic he wanted to invite. Noel said that as there was someone like that, people thought that Hugo Capelius had a job that could be called unprecedented because he was a puppeteer and therefore did not want Hugo to be on his team. The girl asked with interest who this man was and if she knew him. Noel said that this was a trade secret, and the girl asked angrily what bad things could happen if Noel told her everything. Asked again who Noel was, not happy. Asked her to leave him alone and thought that this girl was not as strong as a wolf, but still annoying. Suddenly someone came up to them and asked if Noel had stolen. Noel and the other girl jumped back in surprise, and the girl asked fearfully who it was and where this person came from. The girl noted that she didn't even feel the presence of this person with his abilities, and the stranger in a robe asked if he had made a mistake. Noel confirmed that he did not steal and asked who the girl was. She took off her hooded robe from her head and said that she was Alma and had come in response to the announcement about recruiting a team to join Noel. Noel looked at Alma, and a girl from the wolf team whispered that Alma was still a child. It was impossible. Noel thought about it. Looking back, he realized that he had never seen such a deceptive appearance. He remembered how Alma defeated the big strong man and thought that she was a legendary woman. 10 minutes earlier, when Alma had just come to Noel and admitted that she wanted to join his team. Thinking back on her previous love, she wanted to assemble a core team of only men, so she had to limit her recruitment to only men. Not many female seekers applied, so she didn't think too much about it. She decided that now that Alma had arrived, there was nothing she could do but thank Alma for coming. She asked her to sit down. A girl from the lightning strike team leaned towards Noel and whispered if she was really going to start the interview. She said that Alma was still a child, and children couldn't be seekers unless Alma heard this, and said that she was not a child, but already an adult. She placed her hand in front of her, showing 2 fingers on one hand and one on the other, saying that she was 20 years old and legally an adult. Noel mentally noted that Alma was 5 years older than him. The girl from the wolf team wondered at what age people become adults. Noel asked Alma if he could ask her a few questions. Alma answered that she didn't mind. The girl and the wolf running towards them asked what Alma's favorite food was. Alma said it was strawberries, and Noel angrily asked the wolf not to disturb them. The rest of the wolf team also came to their table, and the man told Noel not to be too insistent and asked if Alma wasn't an attractive candidate. The girl asked what Alma's hobbies were. Alma responded that this is a collection of herbal drinks for men, asking if Alma is one of those who save money all the time, which Alma partially admitted, and the team kept asking her. They were asked to mention 3 numbers, and Alma said 90, 53, 82. And then they asked her what her favorite book was. She said it was 100 Techniques to Turn Tough Guys into Girls, and then they asked her what her job and rank were. Alma said she was a scout, and her rank didn't sound good, thinking it was a good idea because for spying Abyss, it would be useful to have an archer and a scout in the team who could detect danger. They asked if Al had experience as a seeker. Alma admitted that she was only registered as a seeker, since recently she had been continuously trained by her grandfather in the mountains. He noting that it was bad that she had no experience, and asked herself what kind of training she had. She said she would ask one last question, and asked why Alma decided to become a seeker. She answered that she was not interested in becoming a seeker and pointed her finger at Noel, saying that she was only interested in him, but her, eternal. He looked at Alma in surprise and asked if she had any connection with his grandfather. In the past, Grandpa Noel said that his grandfather didn't have his right hand because it was cut off forever. Noel asked if he would go say that the real goal was to avenge his grandfather. Grandpa Alma answered no, not doing meaningless things, and admitted that he was just curious to know what kind of seeker his grandson was. Noel said he understood everything and apologized on behalf of his grandfather, saying that his grandfather passed away 2 years ago, so his apology could be considered as his grandfather's apology. Alma said her grandfather passed away peacefully last month, so there was no need to apologize to her for what happened. Noel noted that many people fought with her grandfather at least once and asked what Alma's grandfather's name was. Alma answered that his name was Alcor Ludicare. Everyone in the room looked at Alma in horror upon hearing this and asked if he had just mentioned his name. They asked who Alcor Ludicare belonged to, and his friend answered that it was in the dark underworld of society where the Yakuza resided. They asked if there were any other criminal organizations, secret societies, and orders of assassins whose name spoke for itself. He explained that this was the worst organization because they were more brutal than the accusations, and they would even kill babies if paid. He said that the legendary killer who created the order and became its leader was Alcor Ludicare. People said that it was once at the request of the Pope to destroy the hostile religious organization. Alcor committed more than 1,000 murders. One bar patron asked if Alma was the grandchild of Alcor. They say this is not a funny joke and asked to stop talking nonsense. He says maybe they will believe it with the bright red district color, but it won't work here. The wolf approaches the man and shouts, making he unhappy because this is not one of them. Logan asks what its function is and if it has anything to do with the wolf. He asks who ordered it. According to Logan, he doesn't like to interfere with other team interviews, unlike the wolf. He considers him an idiot, however he judges what he just heard from him as complete nonsense, so he can't do anything about it. Logan turns to Noel and asks if this is true. Noel crosses his arms and says he doesn't care if Alma tells the truth or not, but Logan is right that he may not have the status to enter here. Alma looks at Noel with a questioning look, and he explains that the Seeker Shop has restrictions on entry depending on their status, and if anyone violates these rules, they are beaten by regular visitors. Alma admits that this is the first time she has heard about it, and Logan tells her to get ready. Alma raises her hand and turns to Noel, saying that she has one question. Noel asks what that question is. Alma asks what determines a seeker's status. Noel explains that first, it depends on their rank and job, and second, you need to prove your abilities. Alma stands on the chair and says that it's all clear to her, pointing her finger at Logan and asking if that's enough if she proves that she's stronger than this arrogant monkey. Logan says that's the worst thing that can be said and adds that Alma is fed up with Noel, who notes with a smile that Logan is furious, and Logan starts attacking, shouting at Alma not to think that she can get out of here alive. He calls her names and hits her, but Alma dodges and cancels out the attack. She says that this is great because this way she can understand if Alma really belongs to Allure's granddaughter. Logan doesn't ask if she would complain if he killed Alma. He shouts that he can't hit her without killing her, and indifferently answers that Logan can do whatever he wants. The bar patrons cheer Logan on and shout at him to do what they suggest so he won't lose to Alma. They ask one by one who else they would bet on, and one of the patrons shouts that he would bet on Logan, while others ask him not to be foolish, because no one wants to bet against a girl. Logan is one of the best hunters in the city. The Seekers all look at Logan, who is standing in front of Alma, and ask him to start quickly. He asks Alma what she's afraid of, mentally wondering why there is sweat on her forehead that won't stop flowing, and why she seems to suffer from such a cold and deadly disease. He stares at Alma and thinks that this is the face of a never-satisfied demon, and the girl from the wolf team who sees this says with a smile that Alma has won. Logan threw a punch, but Alma did it while paying attention that it also happened slowly. She hit Logan's back, and then he knelt in pain. He kicked him and said it was all over. Alma hit Logan again, and everyone saw it. Noel noted that the battle ended in 3 seconds and thought about it. Alma clearly restrained herself because if she wanted to kill Logan, she would do it very quickly. Noel watched as Logan flew back from the punch. The other Seekers looked on in horror and realized that Alma was undoubtedly the granddaughter of the legendary killer. He pointed his finger at Alma and shouted that she was accepted and would not look down on Alma. He thought with a smile that she was his new ally. A human suddenly appeared and angrily shouted that there should be no fighting in his bar. The bar patrons began to flee because if they were caught, they would have to pay for all the damage the bar owner took from Logan. He angrily told him that he would pay for all the broken furniture. Noel and Alma ran out of the bar, and Noel kept teasing, saying it was an amazing fight. Alma asked if Noel didn't believe her either. Noel noticed this, which was not surprising because at first, no one believed that she was Alcor's grandchild. He admitted that he believed in her right away, and Noel asked why. And she explained that Noel's eyes were not like anyone else's. Alma noted that his eyes said he was ready to do anything to win. She remembered how her grandfather had said never to fight because he never fought him conventionally, and you could expect anything from him. He admitted that his eyes reminded him of that advice to stop and not say it like he said before. He wanted Alma to join his team, remembering that Alma had said he wasn't interested in being a seeker, and asked if he would be okay with joining his team in that case. Alma said he didn't mind because he was still free and said that he recognized his strength, but added that the dangers of being a seeker should not be underestimated because the monsters from the abyss were very cruel. He explained that Alma would die in the first battle if he showed his weakness, even if only for a moment. But Alma said that strength is what is needed for battle, not the right mindset. He acknowledged that he didn't have much motivation, but he promised that he would perform well. Noel didn't need to worry because Alma said that power is absolute justice and he believed in it. After hearing this, Noel thought Alma was arrogant. However, it's not because Horizons is small that he noted that Alcor taught him this, and smiled, thinking that he envied him because he was the strong grandchild of the strong man. Noel turned to leave, but Alma suddenly called his name. Noel looked around and noticed the sad expression on Alma's face. He asked what was wrong with her. Alma admitted that she was hungry, and she and Noel went to get food. Alma took a bite of the food she bought, her mind racing, and exclaimed enthusiastically because it tasted so good. She admitted that it was the first time in her life that she had eaten such delicious food. Noel looked at her discreetly. The two of them looked towards the city, standing near the stairs, and Noel asked if Alma was new in town. She said if so, then Alma settled here. Alma sat on the staircase railing, admitting that she was in the city for the first time. Her grandfather had just taught her to blend in with her surroundings. Noel said it was good, and asked Alma for permission to ask her something. He asked if she practiced in the mountains to become an assassin. Alma confirmed this, and explained that she was preparing for a promotion from scout to assassin. She admitted that she had not yet been promoted, but had already completed all the requirements for the B rank. Alma added that she just needed to go through a ceremony with the evaluator, and Noel asked why Alma didn't join the assassin order if she was so strong. Alma sadly admitted that she tried to do this but failed because she was expelled as she didn't fit in with the order members, and asked in wonder if she was really expelled and not accepted into the force. Alma explained that the order acknowledged her strength, but said that she lacked skills and asked what Alma meant. Alma sadly lowered her gaze and apologized, saying that she couldn't say anything else. Noel said she apologized and thanked Alma for sharing so much. She looked at Alma sitting on the fence, looking into the distance, and thought that everyone has secrets, or two things they can't tell anyone, and if Alma can't talk about it, she will force her to tell me, because they could be allies even with secrets between them. Alma said that the members of the order were reforming the organization so they didn't need assassins from the old training. Noel asked in wonder if it was really fair to tell her this. Alma looked at Noel and explained that until now, the sequence of the assassins had been a secret of the organization itself, but soon they would reform it under the Emperor's rule. She said that the current leader of the order informed her of this, and N asked if from now on the order would be controlled by the Empire. Alma said that this was the reason why the order would now focus on espionage instead of assassination. He jotted down that the members of the order would still commit murder, but the way the organization operates will undergo significant changes. Noel asked, "Isn't this too important information?" that he noted that this is not something to be discussed while eating fried buns, or more precisely, not something to be talked about in the first place. Alma calmly added that he was also told that this is confidential information, and asked if he should do it now, and asked what he should do now. He wondered to himself if everything was okay. He didn't know if he would be killed if he knew this information, and assumed that his life wouldn't end now. He asked himself if this was true. Alma told Noel not to worry, and when Noel looked at her in surprise, she said that if something happened, she would protect him so everything was fine. Alma referred to herself as Noel's older sister, and she shouted that Alma herself put her in danger, and then realized what she said, asking in surprise who her older sister was. Noel said it as a last resort. He would use Alma as bait and run away, and Alma stood at the fence shouting that this was terrible for a while. Then Noel asked Al what he knew about buffers. Alma admitted that she didn't know the details, but added that she knew buffers were not their own strength, using strong buffs for allies, and their task was to support the team. Noel said roughly that it was true, and they both walked through the forest. Noel added that buffing allies wasn't the only task for a buffer. Alma was asked what other tasks were there, and she explained that first of all, buffs had different effects, like a skill broadcaster called Team Attack. She said that these skills allowed them to instantly win battles, but at the same time, it had a big flaw because if Noel misjudged the situation, it could lead to the death of the entire team. Alma admitted that it was scary and asked what should be done. Noel said that it was simple and explained that the buffer should be the team captain and control the course of the battle, giving orders and monitoring the movements of enemies and allies. Everyone asked worriedly if they would be able to do this. Noel said that if he couldn't do it, he would definitely be dead. Suddenly, he stopped and said that it was a good spot. Noel looked at Alma and said that he needed her to capture the monster now. Alma asked in astonishment, and then Noel explained that monsters are a collective term for mutated fauna due to the effects of the abyss. He added that these monsters are not as dangerous as they seem, but hunters still consider them as one of their jobs. Alma said that she had heard about monsters before and now she understands what they're called. She showed a piece of paper with a picture of a rabbit with horns on its head and explained that it's a killer rabbit. Noel said that it's an iron-horned rabbit monster that often roams around where Alma saw the picture. Alma noted that Noel is good at drawing, and Noel warned that despite its calm appearance, the rabbit is aggressive for its size, so Alma shouldn't be fooled by its looks. Noel mentioned that it's under Alma's buffs and she should catch these iron-horned rabbits. Alma looked at Noel in surprise and asked why. She said she doesn't need her buffs to catch monsters, and Noel noted that with her strength, Alma can easily catch them. But she asked if Alma knows what will happen if she polishes them. She said it would be easier to catch monsters, and Alma asked if she really thinks so, and mentioned that the buffs will enhance Alma's skills. But the question is, can he handle it? Asking whether scouts really have skills like that when Alma accelerates. Alma confirms this, and explains that the skill doubles his speed and can also stack, so Alma can throw it up to 5 times. Noel thoughts with a smile, knowing that this is indeed expected because a regular C-ranked scout can stack skills a maximum of 3 times. He asks if Alma has mastered it from the beginning, saying that it is impossible because his speed immediately increases, so he had to go through extensive training to get used to such speed. Because if you use it without muscle and ligament preparation, they will tear. He explains it as a new skill, so they will do it now to see how well Alma can handle his buff. He adds that their next actions will depend on the results of this experiment. He remembers that even his former ally took half a month to get used to buffs and asks how about her. Alma firmly says that there is no need to worry because, as he said before, it will show good results. Alma takes off his cloak and gets ready. He asks how many rabbits he can find in the surrounding environment. Alma says that he saw 13 monsters within a 200 m radius. He looks at his watch and says it's enough, and then they will start the experiment. He kneels with one foot and places his hand on the ground, using the spirit of the broadcaster's fighting spirit skill. The power used lifts Alma's hair as if under the influence of the wind. He said it was a strange feeling, an endless energy flowing from the depths of his body. Noel explained that under the influence of buff Alma, the physical strength and recovery rate increased by 25%, and also added that his next skill would enhance its effects by 25%. He said that by doing simple calculations, Alma could move 6 times faster, and if she could catch just one rabbit in 10 seconds, she would pass the test. Alma replied that she understood everything and added that she was always ready. Noel thought it didn't matter how good someone's individual statistics were, because there would be a problem if they couldn't adapt to buffs. Noel remembered that of all the members of his first team, Lloyd took the longest time to get used the buff. Even so, Noel was the most talented. He asked himself, what about it? He ordered him to catch the killer rabbit, and Alma used acceleration. He admired the fact that it was actually 5 times faster and kicked up a large amount of dust into the air. He covered his face with his hands, and at that moment, Alma stopped beside him, holding the rabbit in her hands, saying that she had returned, and looked at him in surprise. Alma showed him the monsters, and said that these were all 13 rabbits she had killed. He looked at his watch and noted that only 0.8 seconds had passed. He thought that if Alma managed to catch a pair of rabbits in 10 seconds, she would have passed the test, but she was able to catch them all in just 0.8 seconds and also adapted perfectly to his buff first. Alma asked if she passed. Noel thought Alma was the real genius, remembering how she used 5 times acceleration to run after the killer rabbit she encountered along the way. She then thought it was as if the monster was frozen in time because they didn't even realize they were caught. Alma found it amazing and realized the power of the Talcor's buff at that time. Alma gave all her rabbits to Noel. Noel asked if she had caught 13 rabbits. Alma confirmed this and asked if she should have caught only 1. Noel said that she needed to catch 1 or more. Alma did everything right. Alma smiled satisfactorily, and Noel noted that she arrived on time, so she passed the exam and the test was over. Alma asked if they were done, and Noel would answer that it was not necessary because Alma did an amazing job, even though it was her first buff, so she canceled her training. Noel stood up and decided that they could finish it as a team. He acknowledged that he had planned to refuse the task, but added that Alma's absence for training cleared their schedule. Alma was happy because this would be their first job, and she exclaimed that she would finally do it. Seeing the abyss, Noel said regretfully that the task had nothing to do with the abyss. He reached out with a piece of paper and pointed it to Alma, saying she could read it. Alma leaned towards the sheet and read that a group of bandits appeared near the village of Mince. Without any connection to this, the head of Mince asked Noel to steal to defeat the bandits. Noel announced that their first job was to subdue the bandits. He thought that hunting monsters was not the only job seekers did, because searching for treasure, exploring new monster hunting areas, and also hunting down bounty criminals were tasks of the seekers as well. He noted that the first 2 tasks were not often requested, but the last 2 jobs were very common because no matter how many bandits and monsters were eliminated, they still remained a threat to society. He thought that the reward for such jobs was less than for cleaning the ditch, but as long as he was paid, it was a good way to earn money. Noel and Alma were ready to go to the village and take transportation. He didn't think that God, who should always protect his people, always took too long to fulfill his duties, and therefore, if the village waited for help from God, they would be robbed or worse, destroyed and wiped off the face of the earth, he said. That's why the village chief had to hire seekers themselves to solve the problems they faced. He couldn't just let it go. The train looked out the window and thought that the road from the capital of the empire to the village of Mince would take about 10 hours. He didn't expect much reward for this task, but decided it was a good way to test the strength of their new team. He firmly believed that they would make the bad people who attacked others pay, and simply put, they would take everything they got from them. Sometime later, they reached the populated area, and Alma got off the train, saying they had finally succeeded. She asked tiredly if this was the village of Mince. Noel explained that this was a transit point, and they would stay here overnight and leave tomorrow morning. Noel and Alma went to the hotel and said Lei was not happy that her whole body was sore. That's why she hated being a stagecoach. Noel agrees with him and says that after being sick for 7 hours in a row, he will vomit and admit that he just wants to take a bath and sleep anyway the front desk. He tells them that there are no more rooms available, so they have to look elsewhere. Noel said to satisfy her, "There is nothing that can be done," and suggested Alma look again. Alma asked if they really had to walk again next time. Their hotel was also told that there were no more rooms available, and Noel suggested going to the next one in 3 more hotels. They were told that all rooms were occupied. Alma exclaimed enthusiastically that she was indeed starting to enjoy going to a different hotel, and Noel weakly asked about it. The next hotel became the last one to stay. The front desk said they had a room available. Noel was happy and asked if the man really confirmed this, but added that the room was only 1 room. Alma and Noel checked in, and when they entered the room, they exclaimed Alma enthusiastically that it was true surprising. Noel kindly entered the room and said weakly that Alma would sleep here, and he would spend the night outside. Alma asked if they could just sleep together. Noel turned to her and said it was not proper for a woman to sleep with a man. She asked if that was so. Alma noted that she was too concerned about it, and assumed that she was just shy, commenting that it was funny. And Noel looked at her with an unhappy expression. A few moments later, Alma sat cross-legged on the bed, warming up while bending her legs. At the same time, Noel dried his hair with a towel as he came out of Alma's bathroom. Alma asked if he had taken a shower, and Noel confirmed it, noting that the water here was good, so Alma should also take a shower. Alma checked Noel and got up from the bed, saying that she thought Noel really had a well-trained body under his coat. She noted that it was beautiful and extraordinary, adding that she knew he had thin and strong muscles like a wild animal. Noel thanked Alma for her compliment and asked if she could touch his muscles a little. She was only allowed to touch them a little, and Alma did so. Sometime later, Noel remembered that Alma had once said she would touch him a little, and Alma apologized and was slightly moved. Far from Noel, she said that he had a very nice body, but added that it was indeed regrettable. Noel asked surprise about it, and Alma said that achieving something like that would require unwavering dedication because it couldn't be achieved through ordinary training. She said that no matter how much Noel trained, he would never be able to match the strength of a pioneer seeker's body. Alma noted that such a body could only be achieved through hard work, not talent, and that's why she said so. Alma sadly lowered her head and said that if it wasn't for her job as a fighter like a god, she could become the strongest seeker Noel. He asked Alma to close her eyes, and when she did, he approached her and flicked his finger on her forehead, grabbing her forehead with his hand, and angrily asked why Noel did this. He answered that it didn't belong to Alma's business, and added that he would go to bed first, so he had to hurry and take a shower. Alma said she understood everything and didn't lie down in bed, remembering Alma's words that a body like that could only be achieved through hard work and not talent. Sadly, he said he knew this better than anyone, whom he thought he knew very well. Well, he didn't have talent, but all he could do was keep trying without giving up. A few moments later, when Alma still hadn't come out of the bathroom, Noel assumed that she was already trapped in the shower and noticed that Alma had done better. He woke up the next morning and remembered his grandfather's wish that Noel would become a capable man and never embarrass their stolen family name, and how he himself didn't promise his grandfather that he would become the strongest seeker. In the morning, Noel woke up and noticed a naked body in front of him. He shouted that Alma was an idiot and broke free from the embrace of everyone lying in bed next to him, saying that even if it didn't bother her, there must be a limit to Alma. She was still sleeping and saw something inside her dream muttering that there were many fried breads there, and angrily shouted for Alma to die and hoped she would be buried under the toast. Sometime later, they arrived at the candy village, and Noel looked at the village chief, remembering that they had never met each other for a year. The village chief exclaimed. The team outside the blue house had not met for a long time, and they were grateful to them for arriving so quickly. The village head suddenly fell silent and stared as NL entered. Surprised, he asked where the other 3 were. Noel said they had run away from them, but the chief didn't need to worry because they would get rid of all the bandits by the end of the day. The village brought them into the house, and when they all sat at the table, they were offered tea. Noel suddenly noticed how a girl with braided hair was peeking out from around the corner watching them. He told Chelsea that they hadn't met each other for a long time, and Chelsea ran off without saying anything. The village head apologized for Chelsea's behavior and noted that she was going through a difficult age. He added that he was looking forward to everyone from outside the Blue House. Noel said that he then felt sorry for her because their handsome leader was no longer there. The village head asked who Chelsea always talked about, but he interrupted her and suggested leaving the topic for later. He asked for permission from Noel and Alma to tell her about the bandits. According to the village head, a group of bandits appeared in the area about 5 days ago. The neighboring village has been attacked by bandits, and many residents have been killed. The bandits took all valuable items and food, leaving the village in ruins. There were about 20 bandits with unrecognizable faces, so they were likely wanderers. The locals couldn't find where the bandits were hiding, but they saw them disappear into the eastern forest. After listening to the village chief Noel, he mentioned that the information he provided was more than enough. He talked about the reward and said that to eliminate the group of 20 bandits, an upfront payment of 200,000 fil would be required, with an additional 300,000 after the job was done, totaling 500,000 fil. The village chief looked horrified and said that 500,000 was a lot. Noel argued that 500,000 for 20 bandits was practically nothing, as it was only 25,000 fil per person. He asked if the village chief would allow their village to suffer the same fate as their neighbors, just because he couldn't part with his money. The village chief exclaimed that he didn't want something like this to happen, and vowed to pay. Noel said they would start immediately, and told the village leader to relax and wait for their return. Noel and Alma left the village chief's house to search for the bandits. Alma called the village chief a wicked bald man for staring at her breasts, and asked for a surprise. She added that he did this despite the fact that his wife and daughter were there, saying she was not pleased that the village chief was truly disgusting. At that moment, someone called out to Noel. Chelsea ran towards them and eagerly asked if Noel would defeat the bandits right now. Noel confirmed this and promised that they would do it very quickly, so Chelsea didn't have to worry about it. Chelsea wished them luck and admitted that she would support them, kneeling next to Chelsea and thanking her for this. Then she asked if she remembered how to make a bamboo dragonfly that she taught her a year ago. Chelsea exclaimed that she remembered and acknowledged that her bamboo dragonfly flew higher than all the others. The kids noted that it was not in vain that she taught her this, and Chelsea showed them the toy and said that it was a bamboo dragonfly made by Noel for her, admitting that she had taken good care of it since that day, because it was her treasure. She exclaimed with embarrassment that she would wait for Noel to come back and prepare a party with her mother. Chelsea closed her eyes and ran away, screaming again that she would wait for Noel. Alma smiled and asked Noel what kind of smile. Alma said that Noel was a manipulator because she met an innocent girl who she admitted she was surprised, and Noel called her a useless idiot and told her to shut up. He repeated and asked angrily if she really said this about her. Noel ignored these words and told Alma to stop talking nonsense and suggested that they go look for bandits. Alma followed Noel and asked her to wait, saying that she couldn't ignore it. Chelsea stood up shyly holding the toy Noel made for her. At that time in the forest at the cabin specially built, one of the bandits asked the main one where they would go now. The main bandit was sitting relaxed in the middle of the cabin on a chair next to where 2 naked girls were sitting on the floor, scratching their ears with their fingers, and saying that it wasn't important to him because they would rob everyone someday. Suddenly, a house collapsed. Someone dropped a wooden barrel and hit the floor, spilling the liquid inside the barrel onto the floor. And someone shouted that Gil had done something wrong because it was their leader's favorite barrel of beer. He added more slowly that Gil almost became a corpse. Isis asked not happily what he said. He told the other bandit that he was the one who dropped his gun and pulled out his knife and stuck it to the bandit's neck. He asked if that was the case. The bandit was very angry and asked if Gil really wanted to blame him. Gil asked if this man would be blamed or not. He pointed the tip of his weapon at the bandit's hand. and then he asked him to stop and shouted so Gil could say it. He did it. Gil stared angrily at the bandit and said so, and stabbed the bandit's head. The knife pierced his head. One of the bandits wanted to say something to Gil, but Gil cut off those words and asked if he heard it, the person who did it. He said no one would want to know about this, and asked if it was really the bandits who stared at the corpse of their comrade, and exclaimed that it was indeed, without a doubt, and true. Noel, in this case, took a deep breath and let out a deafening howl, making all the bandits freeze. Their eyes widened in horror, and their leader asked what happened. At that time, the tent behind him was cut with a knife, and Alma ran inside a little earlier. Noel and Alma were sitting on a high tree branch, observing the robbers. They spotted the leader, Razor Gordo, who was the notorious criminal in the entire western province of the empire. Noel mentioned that he heard that Razor Gordo's gang was defeated by the Seekers. Noel added that Razor Gordo was as resilient as a cockroach. He noted that their opponents were Class B scout bandits, and asked if Alma could defeat them. Alma confidently said that she could easily do it, because even though she had a B rank, she could defeat someone of the same level without much effort. She admitted that she could only do it if she fought them one-on-one, so she wouldn't be able to take on the leader and all of his subordinates at once. Noel asked not to worry because he would be concerned about his subordinates. Alma looked at him in surprise and asked if he would also fight. She noticed that if Noel got too close, he would be noticed due to his bandit detection skill. Noel asked her to listen until the end and told her about Alma's initial plan to use her stealth scout skill to get as close as possible to him without being caught by his detection skill. Then, when Alma took the no position, she would use her ear-piercing broadcasting skill, and even if the bandits were 300 meters away, her skill's power would still be enough to reach them. He explained that this skill would disable all subordinates, but he added that a higher-ranked Gordo should be able to counter this. However, the target will do it first, so Noel's subordinates will say so no matter what. Gordo will also stop temporarily while he tries to understand what is happening. After this, Noel will give the order to kill Gordo, and Alma will use this opportunity to attack the robbers from behind using the quick attack scout skill set. After Gordo is killed and his subordinates recover from his presence, Alma, stunned, must cause confusion in their ranks by killing the bandits one by one and asking her not to worry about killing them all because she needs to focus on bringing chaos to the bandits. He added that after their leader's death, the bandits will turn into an unorganized mob and without their commanders. Their numerical advantage will only hinder their own movements at the moment. When Alma killed Gordo and started approaching the frozen bandits, Noel said that he justified Gordo's death and gave her the following order. He instructed Alma to continue sowing chaos among the enemies until she reached them. Alma and Noel ran to save the escaping robbers, crashing into each other and shouting for the others to do the same. Alma quickly took over the robbers and killed them one by one, appearing completely insane. Alma smiled and furrowed her brow, running towards Alma and pondering whether she fully understood the meaning of the order. She thought it would be a problem if Alma killed all the bandits like this, but if their confusion turned into fear, many people would be able to escape. Noel knew that if this happened, they would be the same. Those who let the bandits escape would be brought to court, and that's why the absolute rule when cleaning up the bandits was to kill everyone who was not in the right place. Enel stopped watching Alma kill the robbers while laughing hysterically. The escaping robber called Alma a monster and shouted that she shouldn't have done it. Approach Noel realized who he was afraid had happened and used his communication skills to ask Tom to come to him. He said that he used a flashbang, and Alma apologized and said that she understood everything. Noel activated the device, blinding the robbers with a flash of light. He instructed the robbers not to think they could escape the confusion and joined Alma, using a silver fire to cut through the bandits, making their escape and destroying them. He thought to himself that once they killed everyone, their mission would be complete. The robbers screamed, and Noel told Alma that he would kill those in the middle and everyone else. Alma said she understood and used her scout skills to perfectly throw a long, thin knife at the robbers, killing them. Some bandits ran towards the destroyed village gate, and Gil shouted at them to hurry and open the gate. He believed he could do it without dying there, as he hadn't done much at that time. He saw Noel approaching the robbers, holding a weapon in his hand, and the robbers stared at him in horror. Gil yelled that Noel shouldn't get close to them, but Noel ignored them, furrowing his brow and walking away towards the robbers. Currently in the village of Mints, the village wife asked if he was sure he wanted to do this. The leader said he was confident and held a small bottle of liquid in his hand, adding that it was impossible for brats like Noel and Alma knew everything about wine. So when they returned to the village, it was the end of them. Noel and Alma at that moment handled with the last robber. After they killed all the bandits, they returned to Mint's village. They were fed, and Noel thanked the village chief and his family for the note of their food that it was delicious. Alma could not do anything but burp and think about it in a mocking tone. Noel said it was a robber. His hiding place is in a rocky area deep in the forest to the east, and the village chief said that this was understood, asking if they could take the robber's things for themselves. Noel answered that they could do it without any problems, and the village chief thanked them and said that indeed very grateful for it. No one said he didn't need a thank you, the village chief, and added that they would soon go to sleep. But before that, he would like to receive the rest of his reward, because in his work it is difficult to rest until all matters are settled. The village leader smiled and said he understood Noel and would take him now. He just needed to give him a little time. The village head and Chelsea enthusiastically asked Noel if she could also become a seeker. Noel and Alma were surprised by these words, and Chelsea's mother apologized for Chelsea's behavior and explained that it was all because she was a fighting type. Noel turned to Chelsea and asked if she wanted to become a seeker. Chelsea confirmed this and exclaimed that she wanted to become an extraordinary seeker like Noel. Noel said that anyone could become a seeker. After they reached adulthood, he explained that all you have to do is register with the Seeker Guild and add those people. After this, they tend to start attending training schools in the imperial capital. Chelsea suggested that the training school would require a lot of money. Noel replied that it was free, because the government encourages people to become seekers, so there is no cost to register or attend classes. Chelsea said she understood, and Noel added that the government does not cover the students' living expenses and the high cost of living and land prices in the capital. Even so, Chelsea works part-time while studying, but she still needs to have good savings to live. Usually, Chelsea becomes sad, and Noel says that there is another way to become a seeker even without financial investment, which is to become an assistant. Chelsea asked again, and Noel explained this job. He would help the seeker act as a baggage carrier, giving directions, and as he said, if Chelsea registered as an assistant to the Seeker Federation, she would be able to earn money and, more importantly, see the fighting teams up close. Noel warned that it would be life-threatening, and from then on. Chelsea would not participate in actual fights. She would have fun and enough opportunities to survive, and thus gain enough experience and knowledge to become a seeker. Chelsea exclaimed that she didn't even know there was something, so she thanked her for reminding her. Noel noted that this was just one of many ways to become a high-paying seeker, and advised Chelsea to gather information first, without just focusing on her own perspective. He added that Chelsea would definitely find a way to advance. Chelsea promised that she would try to gather as much information as possible, and Noel noted that she could use it. Chelsea's mother asked her to help prepare the food, and Chelsea exclaimed that she would do it. She left the room and called Noel, asking if he would accept her. Noel entered the blue team if she became a strong seeker. Noel looked at her in surprise and then smiled, saying that he didn't mind. He offered to fight shoulder to shoulder. If Alma truly became a strong seeker, and he would remain the person who would live up to her expectations. Alma exclaimed that she would definitely become a strong seeker and asked if this would be a promise. Chelsea ran away, and Alma grinned and said that Noel was a manipulator. Noel angrily asked her to shut up, and at that moment, the village head returned. He thanked them for waiting, and Noel noticed an object in the man's hand and asked what it was. Noel noted that it didn't look like his money, and the man who showed his bottle said that he bought this wine when he had extra money, and noted that it was quite famous and cost 100,000. The village chief said that, in his opinion, Noel and Alma would enjoy drinking after dinner, so he suggested that they try his wine. Before that, he brought his gift and didn't ask if he really treated them well. The village chief exclaimed like that because he was truly grateful to Noel and Alma for their help. He noted that over time, the wine should taste better and placed a glass of drink in front of Noel. He told him to drink, and Noel didn't hesitate to move the glass closer to the village chief and invited him to drink. The chief looked horrified, and Noel said that it was uncomfortable for him to do so. He should drink the delicious wine first if he was a guest, as the village chief, being the host, should drink first. The stuttering village chief asked if he should do it first. Alma admitted it. She also thought that the village chief should drink first and asked him to do so. The village chief looked at the glass of wine with horror, and Noel asked if he really didn't want to drink it. The chief said that it tasted really bad, and Noel noted that it was strange. He said that the chief didn't drink well but bought a 100,000 worth of wine. The village chief tried to justify himself, but Noel interrupted his words and said that the wine was poisoned. He asked if this was true. The village chief angrily asked why he would do such a thing. What kind of stupid question was that? He said that the village chief could kill them and take their money and belongings. The village chief pointed his finger at NL and shouted that it was a false accusation. He asked what NL's reason was for daring to insult him like that. The first reason, according to the village chief, was that he had informed them that there were only 20 bandits, but in reality, there were 3 times more. He asked who was lying about the number of bandits inside and ordered them to pay less, which wouldn't be fair for the wine worth 100,000 fil. Noel said that the village chief was lying to him, but the chief yelled back that he didn't know about it. Meanwhile, Noel started talking about the second reason. He said that the wine was cheap and easy to make, evident from its smell. Besides the fact that the wine was cheap itself, its quality had also drastically decreased. The village chief had already opened and closed his bottle before Noel realized it. The chief opened the bottle, poured poison into it, and closed it again. Then he pretended to open the bottle for the first time in front of them. But it backfired on him, and Noel realized that the village chief thought he was a man and didn't know all the details about wine. Noel asked if the village chief was an idiot, saying that if he had any common sense, he would suspect that the people living in the imperial capital had discriminated against Noel's taste. Noel added that there was a third reason, which was that the village chief and his wife had become nervous and practically screamed when they started talking about why they didn't stop showing their intention to kill. "They would kill Alma and Noel," Alma added. "Scouts have the ability to poison and detect it, so there is no doubt that the wine was indeed poisoned." He said that if the village leader wants to kill someone, he should first learn the characteristics of the enemy class. The leader shouted at them to be quiet because their words did not prove anything. Noel calmly said that all the evidence is right in front of the village head, and said that if it's true, the village head should drink this wine now. The village head shouted at him to shut up, and asked him who even cares about what he says. Noel frowned, and said he would ask again if the village head had poisoned the wine. He used his skills and ordered his leader to do it. The village head admitted that he was the one who poisoned it, and after the seekers finished, the bandits wanted to kill him and take their money and equipment. The village leader covered his mouth with both hands and screamed in shock as his mouth began to move on its own. Chelsea, who heard this while crying, asked if her father was really trying to poison Noel, and Alma, the village leader, knelt down and screamed that he deeply regretted it, and asked if he really thought a simple apology would be enough after he tried to kill them. The village chief shouted that what they did was unforgivable, but they had reasons to do it, and asked what these reasons were. The village chief admitted that they had a large amount of debt, but Noel said that even now, the chief didn't stop lying. The village leader said that this time he was telling the truth, but Noel said that this was enough and decided to start with the right eye. The man stared at Noel in horror and asked again. Noel ran towards him and poked his finger into the village leader's eye. Chelsea watched in horror, crying, as the man screamed in pain and Noel tore out his eye, saying that the left eye would be next, followed by the nose and ears, promising to make the village chief look like the trash he was. The village chief's wife sat near the entrance, trembling in fear, and the man apologized, saying he would soon pay 300,000 fil. Chelsea ran away crying, and Noel asked not to make him laugh, adding that if the village chief wanted to be saved, he had to bring all the money he had. The chief's house screamed that he couldn't do this and asked for mercy. Noel said that negotiations were over, and it was the last thing. The village leader saw his life flash before his eyes as Noel brought his finger close to the village chief's second eye, and he begged for forgiveness, shouting that the money would be given to the Gambino family, and they would kill them if they couldn't pay. Noel asked if he thought mentioning the mafia scared him at that moment. Chelsea returned and asked Noel to wait. Noel turned to see her holding a bag in her hand, tears streaming down her cheeks, and Chelsea screamed that this was all they had. He said there are 820,000 fil here and added that they don't even have any copper coins left. Chelsea promised to give it to them and asked them to set aside her father. The village chief asked what Chelsea was doing. She shouted that if she gave this money back, she would be done. Chelsea said that if she didn't give this money back now, the village chief would lose his eye. She added that the seekers would also never accept their request and asked what they would do if Bandit or Monster appeared again. She handed over all the money with trembling hands, and he saw it and said that there were indeed 820,000 fil. He asked if it was true that all the money in this house. Chelsea screamed that it was true and turned out not to be lying. Noel said that he would believe these words. He promised to forget everything about today for this money and asked the village chief if he agreed with this. The village chief lay on the floor and held his shattered eye, saying that he didn't oppose it, and cancelled, saying that if they decided to deceive the seekers again, they should be prepared for the consequences he promised would come and take everything they had, even though the request had nothing to do with him. Noel took the chief of the village and threw it off one shoulder, telling Alma that it was time for them to go. Chelsea clenched her trembling fists and screamed that she hated all the seekers. She cried, but Noel didn't turn around and just lowered his head slightly, remembering how her condition had recently spoken to him. A few moments later, Noel and Alma were walking through the forest. Then Alma said that the life of a seeker suddenly became difficult. Noel asked how he had suggested it to Alma, and Alma hated it, but said it was okay. However, Alma added that he had come to the conclusion that this was not just a job where they were paid to kill monsters. Noel admitted that he was glad to hear that, and said that he allowed Alma to have a less pleasant experience on his first task, so he hoped he paid more attention to it. Alma said that he didn't need to apologize and noted that there was something more important. He asked if Noel was okay, and Noel answered that he was okay because he was not worried about small things being in the past, as it was a waste of time. Alma justified this but said that, whatever the condition, disappointing a girl who looked at him was very unpleasant. Noel's expression became sad, but he said that if he was sad, he was afraid of disappointing others. He hid on a remote island. Alma said it was okay not to take everything on oneself and depend on someone when something was wrong. He offered to hug Noel, but once again called him an idiot and offered to hug a cactus. Alma angrily told him to stop calling her like that, and Noel told her to stop treating him like a recognized child. Alma admitted that it was quite difficult because of his sweet face, blaming everything on him and asking what kind of argument it was. They both smiled, and Noel thanked Alma for caring about him. Alma said it was very sweet, and admitted that she wanted to hug Noel tightly, but she said that if she touched him, even a strand of hair on his body, she would use her authority as a leader to get rid of Alma from the next task. Alma exclaimed that it was cruel, but suddenly he looked up and saw an airship in the sky. He admired it, and Noel saw it. The word airship was seen from the shape and color of the plane. This plane belonged to the third star of the Regalia 7-star, which is the Goat Dinner clan. Alma then asked in astonishment what the sign of its greatness was, and asked if he didn't know about Regalia. He explained that it was a sign of greatness, and briefly explained that a clan is a higher-level organization compared to a group. In the clan, they have achieved many great achievements, and have been awarded medals directly from the Emperor. And this clan is the 7-star Brilliant Capital clan. Noel added that the medal from the Emperor is not just an ornament, it gives strong authority equivalent to high nobility. And one of the special privileges is that the airship belongs to Alma, Alma said in admiration that it is very impressive and asked if this means there are many strong seekers on the airship. Noel noted that they are not only strong, whether it be intelligence, strength, or financial courage, they are the best of the best among them. He reached out his hand and thought that he was still far away, and for those who have wings to fly through the sky, he was just a crawling insect on the ground. Noel clenched his fist and thought that one day he would achieve it. He decided that this was wrong and said loudly that in 1 year, Alma looked at him in astonishment, and Noel said that within a year, he would receive it, and the team outside the blue would make him one of the 7 stars. Alma looked at him with a smile, remembering how she screamed and cried for her life to be returned to her. The man standing next to her said that if Alma was interested in the stolen NL broadcaster, she could visit him. Alma turned to Noel and often said that it had happened, but she was having fun today. Alma admitted that Noel's tactics were intriguing and made her think that fighting alongside others was not a good thing, a very bad thing. Noel was happy that she did it, liked it, and noted that it was good that they made a lot of money this time. Alma said that she was learning more about Noel's personality and asked in surprise what it meant. Alma said that it meant that Noel was very sweet and hugged her, remembering how he stood in front of a man looking at her with indifference, his foot stepping on the body of someone lying in a pool of blood. Alma promised with a smile that she would fight Noel forever. 3 days before meeting Noel, Alma visited the hiding place of the Assassin's Order. She entered the large hall and a man in a robe welcomed her as the granddaughter of the legendary killer, Alcor Ludicare. She asked for permission to ask again and inquired if Alma still wanted to become a member of their order. Alma confirmed this and said that this was why she came here. The man smiled and instructed Alma to pass through the door. He added that if she passed the test, their shadow god of the natural world would bless her. Alma entered the grand hall. The man standing there asked if he really belonged to Alka, his granddaughter. He observed with a smile that it wasn't too obvious, and Alma wearily placed her hand on her forehead, asking if such a non-entity was truly a member of the order. She said she was disappointed, and the man angrily asked what she meant. Alma drew her dagger and asked the man if he was an examiner. She requested him to shut up, stand up, and start. The man rushed towards Alma and yelled at her not to act like that was important, because she was only a rank C. He promised to show her the power of a true killer and began attacking Alma with punches, but she dodged every blow and then knocked the man to the ground, placing her foot on his chest. The man said in fear that this was impossible, and Alma said so expected from a small fish, calling it ridiculous, and explaining that her grandfather had planned everything, the fighting techniques taught in the Order of Assassins, so it wouldn't be possible to work on him. The man asked in horror if he really belonged to Alka, Alma's granddaughter, saying that he had to do it, realizing this even when they first met, adding that even for the saddest little thing, he was just an incurable idiot. She told him not to worry because he no longer needed to worry about his worthlessness. Alma extended her weapon in front of her, and the man yelled at her to wait because the test was over. And he lost. Alma said this was not the end, and everything would happen when she killed him. Alma swung it, but someone grabbed her hand, saying that this was enough, and she had to put her weapon away from the man who stopped her. Alma threw it aside and looked at the man, asking who he was. He answered that he was the head of the Simon Gregory Order. Alma stood up and said if he was a leader, she could recognize his power. She asked why Simon stopped her. Simon said he would ask her instead, and asked why Alma tried to complete the test. Alma grinned and said that her grandfather had only said that the strongest survived this test, and the losers gave their lives to the gods. Simon from the Shadow Realm said this was in the past, and under his leadership, these disgusting old rules had been removed. He looked at the examiner and said she could go. The man got up from the floor and left the room. Alma looked at Simon and asked if she passed. Simon said she passed the battle indicator. Alma asked if there was something else, and Simon said he would ask her a few simple questions. She asked if Alma killed Alcor. Alma solemnly confirmed this, and the man sadly lowered his head, realizing that he had lied in the letter. Alcor had died of old age. Alma's words became useless as she aged, and even her rank X lost its power. Similarly, Alcor was easy to kill, Simon said. He mentioned that Alma asked and asked why she did it. Alma asked unhappily if she really needed to ask this. Simon replied that she didn't need to do it, and admitted that he knew it was a stupid question. Alma said it because she could remember wanting to kill Alcor, and Simon realized that Alcor was a terrifying person, even holding rank X. Currently, Alcor was responsible for the Order, and couldn't be defeated when he was in his prime, as he was dying in human form. Alma noted that Alcor was an eternal loser, and Simon agreed, saying that there was always someone better. That's when paranoia started to drive Simon crazy. Simon looked at Alma and said that she didn't belong to Alcor's lineage, but she was actually his daughter. Alma confirmed this and explained that Alcor didn't need a successor. He just wanted to create someone like himself and truly believed that this way he could erase his past stigma. Alma said that Alcor believed that if he could raise someone who would defeat the immortal creature, he could rewrite the past. Simon noted that it was truly sad and said that this was the end of the journey. Alma disagreed, saying that Simon was wrong because only pity was reserved for those who were victims, namely women who were kidnapped and forced to give birth to unwanted children. Alma remembered how they argued with each other as the children screamed in pain, and once again said that she felt sorry for the women who were tortured to death by the possession of Alcor, as well as the brother and sister. She added that Alcor was the most successful product. However, she repeated it again and again that she should not try to kill the immortal, noting that even after losing her mind, he could not forget his fear. Surely the defeat that Alma admitted she still felt hatred towards this man, even though she killed him, but when she thought about it, she felt satisfaction, because even though the immortal had long been an old parent. Simon said that the immortal died a few years ago, and Alma looked at him in surprise. Simon explained that a chasm appeared in the city where the immortal lived, and he exchanged the mortal breath with a lord-class monster, which was the core of the chasm. Alma realized that even the immortal had died, and she was left alone with Simon. Simon honestly said that Alma was not suitable for the Order, and Alma asked why. She exclaimed that she had proven her strength, and Simon explained that their organization of assassins would soon change their structure so they would no longer operate as an independent secret organization, but would be reborn under the Empire's operation, and their new modus operandi would focus on espionage and using their powers for the good of the country. Alma asked if she meant to say that they wouldn't kill Simon anymore, stating that it wasn't her problem, but adding that murder would now only be a means to an end, and not the end itself. Before she admitted it sounded similar, but there were still major differences, and adding that this approach had a future. Simon said it was a bloody massacre at Al's house, and he couldn't believe someone so dangerous was being protected by the country. Alma asked if this was the result of the 21 years she spent against her will. She cried and realized that she had done it unpleasantly, no friends, no love, and so on, while she was forced to follow his obsession, and in the end, her strength was useless. She asked why she was alive at that time. Alma asked for her life back, and Simon said her life was only hers, and turned to leave. Alma asked Simon to wait, and asked what she needed to do. Simon told her to live her life as she wished, and added that his orders weren't the only place where her strength was useful, because many people wanted to get her into their ranks, like the Seeker. He said there was an interesting story that the Eternal Grandson worked as a Seeker in the capital Empire, but his job wasn't combat type, but a broadcaster, and as you know, this job is the weakest right now. She heard Noel say that in a year the team outside the blue color will be one of the 7 stars, and he thought so hard for a dream that seemed impossible to achieve, and he didn't think he would succeed. But he wanted this dream to come true as much as Noel wanted it. Alma remembered seeing Noel work hard, and even if she didn't have talent, someone would sell her. He keeps moving forward, thinking that someone who works so hard to put in maximum effort is destined to have rewards. The whole world is truly rotten. In his heart, Alma asks Noel to show him the moment when all his hard work will pay off and say that he will fight against it forever at that time in the capital of the Empire. Someone said they were not happy about it, but once again, it's kind of silly. The task this man decided on is time to pay the talker a visit. When Alma and Noel return to the capital of the Eterai Empire, Alma asks where they will go first. No one is walking up the stairs in front of them, saying that the first place they will start is his friend's weapon shop. He explains that this shop is owned by a dwarf craftsman who is skilled in his craft and never raises their prices. They approach the shop and hear the dwarf shouting that it belongs to the black steel dragon. Its muscles are soft but much more durable, making it perfect for making both armor and undergarments. The person shouts that he understands everything and asks not to shout at him, looking at Alma and noticing that she has done a good job with the weapons and armor, but if not properly maintained, they will quickly become unusable, so the weapon warehouse can be relied on at any time. It's simple and irreplaceable. Noel turns to the owner of the weapon warehouse and shouts that Noel will not lose in today's auction. Noel explained that he is not here for business, but just wants to introduce the store owner and the new ally. Noel introduced Alma, saying that she is a new member of the team outside of the blue and expressed hope that they will get along. Alma said she is so happy to meet him, and the dwarves looked at her after the weapon store. Noel said they will go to the goods store and explain that the store is owned by a monk who can be asked for help, so Alma should be friends with him. Alma looked around and said there are many interesting things in the store. The store owner exclaimed that he and Noel haven't met each other for a long time and asked why he came this time without explaining that he came to introduce him to the new ally named Alma. He added that her class is Scout, so he thought he could rely on her. The store owner exclaimed that his store is just right for her, as it can create poisons and medicines from their blood, and the effects of this skill change depending on what the user eats immediately before using it. He added that they have many options for chemicals and ingredients, keeping a few that are suitable for Alma. Then they both walked further and saw how the man who closed his eyes said he would open them for someone. He exclaimed that he feels strong and congratulated the girl standing in front of him on the fact that her rank increase is complete. Alma explained that this is the appraisal union and said that she already knew this. This place is where work gets evaluated and rewarded. He recalled how Alma managed to improve her rank from Scout rank C to Killer rank B. He asked if it was true, remembering that when someone's rank increases, a special design appears on their body. Alma showed him a picture she made, which became him, he indicating that she didn't need to show it to him. Alma mentioned that she heard the design usually appears on the chest or nails, so she hoped it would appear on her chest because it would be hilarious. Noel angrily yelled at him to leave her alone, and at that moment, a man who looked half like a male sheep approached them. He asked if he had forgotten something somewhere, and explained that he had given a brief tour. The man noticed Alma standing next to Noel and asked who she was. Noel explained that Alma was her new ally, and assumed that Alma's condition for touring the imperial capital was to be with Noel. Noel looked at Alma's appearance and thought she was an extraordinary newcomer who would always be accepted, especially since Alma was a young and beautiful girl with big breasts. It was only natural that the older people would treat her well. He remembered how each shop owner happily told Alma not to be shy and to come any time, thinking that she would receive special treatment. Sometime later, Alma told Noel that she was hungry, and she offered food. Noel agreed, saying they would take a lunch break and then go to the book gallery skill. Suddenly, Noel heard something and turned around. Alma realized this and shouted to Noel. Noel departed and apologized to Alma, explaining that he had to continue his business trip, leaving Alma to eat alone. Alma tried to stop him and called Noel again, but he ignored her. Noel walked towards the dilapidated area where bones and trash were scattered on the ground and heard someone directing him. A man approached him and advised Loki not to intentionally visit the slum area, as they could make a deal elsewhere. If not, he asked Loki what he would do if it were his clothes that smelled bad. Loki apologized but mentioned that he was constantly taking risks. He didn't want to make a deal that could be monitored. He questioned if this didn't apply to Noel as well. Noel responded that he wasn't satisfied with Loki, even though that was the issue. They could choose a better location, and added that unlike Loki, he continued to live on the progressive side of society, so he didn't need baseless rumors just because he walked around the slum area. Loki chuckled and mentioned that Noel heard this from someone who used to sell his former ally into slavery. Noel angrily told him to be quiet and reminded Loki of the reason he came here. Loki stated that he had obtained what he needed, so he asked and stopped making that terrifying expression. Loki handed Noel an envelope and mentioned that this was the result of his hard work this time. Noel took a sheet of paper out of the envelope and, after examining it, commented that this was, as usual, excellent work, which was expected from the finest information broker in the capital. Loki explained that all of this was possible because he possessed her work, which allowed him to mimic the appearance of anyone he had recorded. Even the guild appraisers hadn't fully grasped all of its capabilities, as by changing his appearance to that of influential individuals, he could infiltrate anywhere. Noel observed that Loki could even freely alter his age and gender, a well-known secret to him, enabling him to sneak into any place unnoticed. Loki remarked that Noel was quite astute, as he was attempting to free the notorious killer master Hugo Capellius from prison and recruit him as an ally. Noel showed Loki the piece of paper he had received and confidently stated that with this information, he was even more convinced of Hugo's innocence. He vowed to prove it and bring Hugo onto their team beyond the blue. Noel made it clear that all Loki had to do was focus on his job and avoid unnecessary interference. Loki acknowledged that it was intimidating, and in response, Noel tossed a bag of money to Loki, instructing him to leave. So, Loki had to contact Noel again through email for the next assignment. Loki assured him that he would handle it, and Noel departed, contacting everyone to inform them that their business was concluded. He then inquired about Alma's whereabouts. Alma angrily shouted that Noel was too slow and that he was waiting impatiently at the restaurant. Noel asked Alma to calm down and quickened his pace, urging him not to shout so angrily. Noel believed he could convince the killer to join his side, but he realized it would take a long time to prove Hugo's innocence. So for now, he needed to gather a new team of people. However, finding a worthy seeker wouldn't be easy. Noel knew that if he could recruit at least 2 more people, they might have a chance to venture into the abyss. As he pondered this, he noticed a young man sitting against the wall. Noel felt sorry for the homeless person in this slum area.